Jerry, David Orr's going to have to be brought into the criminal side to send in the regular agents.
Oh, when you go to, oh wait.
I could do it.
Sherry, were you able to get the Zoom link for David?
Yes,
Oh.
it was resent.
Okay, thanks.
I did it.
Were you able to connect with Councilmember Abadamas? We got a text saying she can't find her link.
Yes, she's on.
She's on.
Oh, she's here. Okay, good. All right, well, we got both of them.
Also,
All right,
hi Pam for now. So that
we're all present. So, and it is just past 6:30, so we'll get started. I'll call the Joint City Fire Protection District Board meeting to order for March 2nd, 2021. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Can we have the flag, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Miriam Abadamus. Here. Councilmember David Orr.
Here.
Councilmember Pierre Washington.
Here.
Vice Mayor Mark Joseph.
Here.
Mayor Leon Garcia.
Here. We'll move now to report on closed session, confirmation of reportable action. Mr. Ross.
One second, I don't see Bill.
We come back to that.
Bill, you're on mute. Are you there?
Yeah, there you are.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
All right, the council and the fire board convened in open session at 5:31 p.m. to address the matters that were agendized for both the city and the fire board in closed session. There were no written comments concerning the closed session, so you adjourned at 5:31 to address those matters, and you concluded that at 6:22 p.m. Returning to address the matters that are agendized for open session. I will do a written report upon return from closed session consistent with the provisions of Government Code Section 54-957.1. That would conclude the report at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Ross? None? Thank you, Mr. Ross. Let's move on to city clerk's announcement pursuant to Government Code 54952.3. It is as stated in the agenda. City clerk, please read the teleconference participants notice.
Thank you for joining the March 2nd, 2021 City of American Canyon City Council meeting. This meeting is being held entirely virtually in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The format tonight will be similar to that of an in-person city council meeting. In addition to the Zoom platform, the meeting is being broadcast on cable TV, channel 28, on YouTube, and streamed live on the city's website. You will see the city council members on your screen, along with members of city staff. All members of the public will participate in a listen-only mode. Public comments and invited for non-agenda items during the public forum section of the meeting and on each agenda item. When the item you wish to speak on is called, please follow these steps to make your comment. When the mayor calls a particular item and you wish to speak on that item, click the raise hand button if joining by computer. If joining by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. When it's your turn, I will announce your name and invite you to speak. You may see a message saying the host would like you to unmute your microphone. If you get this message, click unmute myself and begin speaking. To unmute yourself by phone, dial *6 and begin speaking. Video will not be turned on, only audio. You have up to 3 minutes to make your comments to the city council. At the end of your 3 minutes, I will ask you to conclude your comments quickly and I will mute your audio once you're done. Please press only *9 to raise your hand for the items you wish to speak on, and the raised hand will be cleared at the end of each item. The agenda for this meeting is available on the City Council's page of the city's website. As in the standard practice, community members are allowed to comment one time on each agenda item. All votes at tonight's meeting will be taken by roll call. We ask your patience and understanding when there are technical difficulties. This concludes my introductory remarks.
Thank you. Moving on our agenda this evening, proclamations and presentations. We have none this evening. Comment on non-agendized items.
Hi, Mayor and Council. We received comments on non-agenda items from Jason Kishner on the campus and Cynthia Jock regarding hotels. These comments will be incorporated into the record. There were additional comments received on public hearing item C1. Those comments will be noted when we hear the item.
Thank you. Any agenda changes, Council? Matters related to, there are no matters related to Fire Protection District. There's the matters related to American Canyon City Council. If now there are no agenda changes, I will accept the motion for.
Hi, Mayor. There is one item that there was an amendment to, but City Manager Holly will speak on that.
Okay. Mr. Holly?
Yes, that was related to consent item B4. We've updated the attachment in the staff report to reflect Amendment 4. It was inadvertently, the wrong attachment was in there. So the council received that yesterday, and the correct attachment will be included into the record on consent item B4. In addition, I'll note, it looks like we have a raised hand with one of our participants who may have been trying to make a public comment on a non-agenda item. So we may want to go back to that after the consent.
Okay. We'll finish the consent calendar first and go back.
I'll make a motion. We approve the consent calendar.
Second. Motion second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Miriam Abadamos.
Yes.
Councilmember David Oro.
Yes.
Councilmember Pierre Washington.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mark Joseph.
Yes.
Mayor Garcia.
Yes, thank you. Moving back to public comment, these would be on non-agendized items or matters.
We have Karina Cervante.
Mhm.
Hi,
Hi.
Karina.
Hi,
Good evening, welcome.
thank you. So my last name is Cerventi.
Cervante.
Thank you. That's okay. You'll
I
get it.
mess up every time.
That's okay. You'll get it. Thank you so much. Good evening, City Council and staff. I was like frantically saying, I have my hand up. I would like to announce to City Council and staff the ACMS African American Coalition Town Hall on March 23rd via Zoom at 6:30 p.m. The mission of the African American Coalition is to create equitable outcomes for African American students in academic access and achievement through ongoing staff development and family and community partnerships. You can get the Zoom link at the ACMS website or on Facebook on our ACMS Facebook page, or contact me for more information. We hope to see you there, and please share and share with all your AC community friends. I would also like to commend the city staff for bringing vaccination opportunities to American Canyon, but I would like to make sure that information like this be shared in Spanish as well as specifically on Facebook. I did notice that today the staff sent an email that was both in Spanish and English, so thank you for that. Specifically for Hispanic and Latinx demographic, I would like to know, what are your plans to reach out to the 65 plus Hispanic community? Please utilize our county supervisor and assistant city manager, both fully bilingual, but also utilize the commissioners from both planning and PCS and council members that speak Spanish to do outreach. It is of extreme importance that the 28% Hispanic population of our city know what's happening in the city and are included and informed. Thank you for your time. Have a great meeting.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment?
There are no public comments, additional
All right.
comments.
Thank you. We'll continue now with our agenda. We have public hearings. Item C1, conduct a public hearing and consider an interim urgency ordinance imposing a 45-day moratorium prohibiting new fueling stations in all zoning districts in the city of American Canyon, pending review and possible amendment of the municipal code regulations, and setting forth the facts constituting such urgency. Okay, staff report, please.
Yes, Mayor, I'll go ahead and turn this over to Community Development Director Brent Cooper. Take it away, Brent.
Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. Brent Cooper, Community Development Director. Glad to present this item for you tonight. I have a brief presentation for you, but before I start, the city clerk has a brief announcement with regard to public comments that we've received before the meeting began.
Hi, Mayor and Council. We received written comments on this item from the following people. Amina Hillard, Andrea Pettymark, Ava Baloyan, Beza Mesfin, Brian Lopez, Charles Francisco, Chris James, Chris Morris, Congas Coalition Opposing New Gas Stations, Cynthia Jock, Elissa Smitty, Gary Kimok, James Harney, Jay Worthy, Jessica Rainey, Jay Miller, Karina Saventi, Kim Hester, Kim McDonald, Lila Pauls, Laura Sterling, Mike Baker, Neptu M, Nicole A, Pamela Torres, Roman Baloyan, and Skylar Nguyen, Nathan Dooley. All comments been forwarded to the City Council and will be incorporated into the record.
Thank you. This time, before we proceed any further, any ex officio communication with the developer interests. For myself, I've had a conversation with all Circle K applicant, Robbie applicant, and the 7-Eleven applicant as well. Anything further?
I've had a couple of conversations. I had a meeting with the representatives from Rotten Robbie. I met with the representative from Circle K, and I did receive a phone call that I apologize publicly for not returning yesterday. I note that Ross is on the attendee, so I want to apologize. I did not get back to you. And read all the emails that we've been all getting.
Yep. I had no further conversations with the folks at the California Capital and Investment Group, which is, colloquially known as Circle K applicant. So that was prior to the other meeting. But I did have a new meeting with the CEO of Rotten Robbie. Had the chance to have a conversation with him. And I think that's it outside of all the emails that we've been getting.
Yeah, I'll disclose that, excuse me, that I did have a conversation with Mr. Ross Hillshine prior to last council meeting. And then since that last council meeting, I had a conversation with Mr. Tom Robinson and Mark Salma from Rotten Robbie.
Any new ex parte communications? Last meeting, I mentioned that I spoke with Mr. Hillesheim, and I know Mr. Robinson reached out to me via email, but I didn't have the opportunity to respond. I apologize for that as well. And outside all of the emails we've received, I haven't discussed this with anyone since last meeting.
Now, since last meeting, I did have an email from Mr. Hillesheim, which I responded to.
Mr. Mayor, Council, there is a written letter that was sent by email on Sunday the 28th, also from Mr. Hillesheim, which details factual information concerning the former USA gas station at 3438 Broadway, summarizing the Regional Water Quality Control Board classification and review of the property and the clearance concerning that property in April of 2009 from County Health. That communication will be a part of the record in the matter. It's announced because it was sent to all of you individually.
Thank you. Anything further in this disclosure? Not then proceed. Mr. Cooper.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'll share my screen. I have a brief presentation. Some of it you've seen before, but it's, I think, always helpful to have a little refresher. And then I'll be open for questions. Okay. Hope everyone can see the home page there. Okay.
Good.
So for a brief background, this is the third time the City Council has discussed the potential for an urgency ordinance. We had two meetings in February. The first one was a workshop to discuss the issues in very general sense. The conclusion of that being the City Council directed staff to bring forward a draft 45-day interim urgency ordinance. On February 16th, we discussed them thoroughly, lots of great conversation, dialogue, input, and the council did not approve the proposed ordinance, but recommended staff bring forward a second alternative, which we've done in this meeting. Just a quick refresher for everybody. We have three fuel stations in town. The oldest one is the Union 76. Just formerly, it was Arco Station, very familiar there at Donaldson Way at Broadway. The very popular Safeway station, built kind of beginning of 2000s. It's of course our largest station, and then the most recent one for the Chevron up there at Napa Junction Road and Broadway in 2008. We have one approved station, that's the Circle K. That was approved in October, and the applicant is working on obtaining construction permits for this application. Each of these gas stations might have little different components to them. This one in particular has a convenience store in addition to gas pumps. And then we have two proposed service stations. One is Rotten Robbie. That's at Donaldson Way across Broadway from the Union 76. It's the largest of the applications It has a car wash, convenience store, gas pumps, and then there's room for future retail at the back. And then we have a second one for a 7-Eleven service station gas pumps only. That's next to the 7-Eleven over by Walgreens. And so that would only be gas pumps. Just have a graphic here depicting where all these are located along Broadway, going from the north to the south up at Napa Junction Road here. In the red star here is the Circle K, that's approved. Of course, then we have the Chevron on the other side of Highway 29 or Broadway. Heading to the south, we have the very familiar Union 76 station at Donaldson Way. And then across the street there is Rotten Robbie, was proposed. To the south here, we have the Safeway at American Canyon Road. And then off of American Canyon Road at Broadway, the other Broadway, and the green star there is the proposed 7-Eleven gas station. So people in the audience might wonder, what is an urgency ordinance? And this is a very special provision of state law. Unlike most ordinances that take some time for the council to go through a process to approve, this one can be adopted the same night as the vote to approve it. And the purpose for it is to prohibit certain uses that might conflict with the current or proposed ordinances, general plan, and the like. There are 3 individual opportunities for an urgency ordinance, all spelled out by state law. If the council proceeds with an urgency ordinance, the first one that is allowable is only for 45 days. And so that's where I have the red arrow, and that's kind of where we would be today. So should the council adopt an urgency ordinance today, it would become effective immediately today and would extend until April 16. The next opportunity for an urgency ordinance would be one that would last from up to 10 months and 15 days. And then if the studies are still continuing, there is an option for a third urgency ordinance, that's 12 months. Altogether, when you take all 3, it's 2 years. So sometimes that's what's needed to get through the issues, but many times not so much. So there's no need to take all that time if the issues are simpler, but it's there in case it's needed. Because an urgency ordinance takes effect immediately and it's kind of a special provision, it does take a supermajority of the council to approve it. In this case, it'd be 4/5. And so when I ask, well, what happens after it? And so the purpose is you conduct your studies and potentially you might change your ordinances or the general plan and certain policies to address the issue that kind of started this in the first place. But not necessarily. An analysis could result in perhaps continuing. It's really more of an opportunity to dig into an issue and really kind of get to the root of what might be people's concern and then come up with a sensible solution. I kind of mentioned that at the last meeting, the council requested an additional alternative. So in the staff report today, there's 2 presented. The first one is alternative 1. This was presented at your last meeting, and this one is sort of more all-encompassing. It would prohibit processing discretionary applications for new fuel stations, and it would prohibit construction permit issuance. And so in this case, that would apply to the Circle K, Rotten Robbie, and 7-Eleven stations. So the Circle K being the ones approved and is looking at getting construction permits. Rotten Robbie and 7-Eleven are discretionary applications. We have a second alternative that would limit the moratorium, 45 days, to discretionary application processing. So in this case, it would be the Rotten Robbie and 7-Eleven. If no alternative is selected and we kind of default to our current ordinance, then fuel station applications that we do have will be processed in accordance with a conditional use permit. We talked about this at your first February meeting. The conditional use permit process itself is quite robust with the standards that it requires, findings of consistency with the neighborhood, health and safety, general plan, and the like. Every site that you look at presents unique situations. No two locations are the same. And so because of that, approval of one fuel station doesn't necessarily would commit a decision-making body such as the Planning Commission, who is the approval authority for a conditional use permit, to approve a second one, say if one is approved. Each one stands on its own merits. So kind of where do we go from here? Tonight, obviously, this is a public hearing. We have many folks that have provided testimony through written communication. Many may want to speak tonight. Ultimately, it'll be up to the council to decide whether or not to approve an urgency ordinance. If one is approved, it would last for 45 days. It expires after 45 days. And so if there's any possibility of a new policy or if there's a need for an extension, that has to happen at either a regular or a special council meeting. And so we don't have a council meeting neatly fitting 45 days from tonight. The next regular one before the expiration would be April 6th. Of course, you could always have a special meeting, but that'd be up to you. They're rare. We would plan on bringing something back for council consideration on April 6th. So with that brief presentation, glad to answer any questions you have.
Mr. Mayor, you're on mute.
Any questions from council? Seeing none, if there are none, then I will open the public hearing at this time. We had a notice of written comments related to this matter. Sorry, but Walden, you're muted.
Walton, you're muted.
The names were mentioned earlier, and we do have 3 hands raised on this item.
How many people do we have in attendance this evening?
Oh, well, we have more. They're loading up.
Give me an idea of how many?
Mr. Mayor, on the Zoom, it looks like we have 25 attendees, and so far attendance has gone up.
We have 25 attendees and so far 11 hands raised. 12, so keep going up.
Perhaps maybe we should just start with that much interest. I think maybe we should just start the hearing and let everyone speak, and then we can deliberate.
Yeah, would the council be, I'm considering limiting it to 2-minute comment.
I have it on my phone.
If somebody has made a comment that you support, though, you could simply say you support the previous speaker on that, call him by name, and that could suffice.
Karina Cervantes T is first.
Very good. Just open the public comment then.
Hi, Karina.
Hi, Cervantes.
Good evening. Welcome.
Cervantes.
Your comments for 2 minutes, please.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm writing to you today concerned about the probability of you voting for more gas stations in American Canyon. Planning Commission voted already on Circle K1. It is worrisome to see our elected officials voted by the people and appointed members of the commission thinking of adding more gas stations to a small corridor that Highway 29 in AC has. You are all super smart folks, but I'm going to go ahead and give you some perspective. The distance from the gas station at Safeway to the Chevron gas station at the Walmart shopping center is 1.6 miles. It will take me 6 minutes by car, 28 minutes walking, or if I feel adventurous, 8 minutes by bike to reach them. Currently, we have 3 fully functioning gas stations in a 1.6 mile ratio, and 1 abandoned gas station on the east corner of Donaldson and Highway 29, which staff failed to add it to that little map that they showed. Once these gas stations are no longer needed, the environmental impact is horrible. They cannot be used for anything Where children are present, the cleanup to repurpose is astronomical, millions of dollars. So those out of business gas stations sit there as an eyesore on prime real estate land. The latter example has been empty, sitting at that corner since I moved here in 2009. The underground gas tanks are extremely hard to clean and they leak. I've added a piece of an article to the challenges on repurposing gas stations and also the announcement from Governor Newsom on the phase out gas fossil fuels powered cars by 2035. What I ask of my elected and appointed official is to look into the very near future and ask yourself, is this what we want to look like in 10 years? Do we want to see all of these out of business gas stations just gathering dust in prime real estate lots? Do we want to leave all of this pollution to our next generations? Or do we want to build electric charging stations by retail and dining businesses so they can capture revenue while customers wait for their cars to charge? Cleaner soil and creeks. Also think diversity. When you think about businesses in AC, don't take the easy way and approve more gas stations. Think about your constituents. Do go on social media and see the response and talk to us and ask our opinion. An update to my letter to the Planning Commission and to you, 3 city council members and 1 planning commissioner have reached out to me and members of the community. Your responsibility is to work for the people in your community, all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
And Mayor, before we pull in the next speaker, I would like to announce we received another written comment from Megan Morandami, and that comment will be emailed to all council members.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Mark McClure.
When will that email be emailed to us? Because we need the opportunity to review it prior to making any decisions.
It's been sent.
Hello?
Hi, Mark.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Mark. You can begin speaking.
Oh, I would like to cede my time to Ross Hillesheim, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We don't see, right?
So, hi, Mark. Mark,
Yes. Yes.
if you would like to speak on the item, you can. Tonight, we cannot, you cannot pass your time on to the next person.
Okay. Then I'll just say that my name is Mark McClure. I work with Mr. Hillesheim at California Capital Group, and I appreciate the deliberation that happened at the last council meeting. I think everything was going in a positive direction. There was consideration made for the Circle K project that received unanimous approval at the Planning Commission, and the city council members very thoughtfully deliberated over a carve-out for the approved project. And I think that the city attorney was able to go back and work on some language and consider the alternate as a possibility tonight. So I would just encourage you to take that into consideration and take into account the time invested with staff on this Circle K project, and hope that it can be carved out. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Woody Hastings. Hi, Woody.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Garcia and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Woody Hastings, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Coalition Opposing New Gas Stations, a community-based group of volunteers founded in 2019 with a mission to stop the construction of new gas stations. We urge you to vote in favor of Alternative 1. I do not live in American Canyon, and you may wonder why someone who does not live in American Canyon would care about a new gas station being built in your city, and you might question whether anyone outside American Canyon should have standing on local land use issues. We are here, Congress is here in solidarity with your constituents who rightly oppose new gas stations in American Canyon. I'd like to explain how and why I do think non-American Canyon residents have standing. It's just like how a smoker has the right to smoke as long as he or she is smoking in a place where the secondhand smoke can't get to the other people's noses. Today we have a climate crisis, and the problem is that greenhouse gas emissions emitted anywhere affect people everywhere. So there is no place to smoke, quote unquote, that does not cause harm. Expanding fossil fuel infrastructure prolongs the use of fossil fuels and allows more burning of fossil fuels, and burning fossil fuels worsens the crisis. It's a matter of connecting the dots. There are some more dots to connect. The North Bay is already experiencing consequences of the climate crisis, and American Canyon is not immune. But the North Bay is not alone. Climate disruptions are occurring all over the world. We must stop pouring fuel on the global climate crisis fire, and build and stop building new fossil fuel infrastructure in the midst of a climate crisis is doing just that. As was already mentioned, the Governor Newsom has issued executive order ending the sales of new gas-powered cars by 2035, and that process of getting there is already underway. And Chevrolet has announced the cessation of sales of new vehicles coming soon, gas vehicles. And other automakers have made similar announcements, and more are expected to follow suit. So the 2020s is not a time to be building soon to be obsolete fossil fuel infrastructure. We have enough gas stations. Doing anything less than adopting alternative one is simply not enough to meet the climate emergency moment. We must do everything in our power to address this crisis and ensure future generations that we place their well-being and the health of the natural world before short-term commercial interests. Addressing the global level climate crisis meaningfully begins at the local level. Please use your authority to stop the expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure and help lead the American Canyon community to a clean, equitable, safe, and healthful future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Chris Benz. Hi, Chris.
Here I go. I am speaking on behalf of Napa Climate Now. Napa Climate Now would like to speak in support of Alternative 1, prohibiting application processing and permit issuance during the moratorium. The moratorium will give the City Council time to reevaluate what zoning changes are needed to allow the Broadway District-specific plan's vision to be realized and not compromised. Limiting gas station development will also be building on your efforts to make American Canyon clean and green. You have an incredible location between the wetlands and the majestic hills, between the Bay Area's urban vitality and Up Valley's rural serenity. This is matched by the caring and involvement of your community. Please make the most of what you have for now and for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Samuel Bayless. Hi, Samuel.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for rejoining me. Thank you very much for your time tonight. My name is Sam Bayless. I'm the Director of Policy for the California Fuels and Convenience Alliance. We're the trade association in the state of California that represents our 12,000 gas stations. So as somebody who spends every single day working on climate issues with the California Air Resources Board, the State Water Resource Control Board, and others, I will say that we have a 60,000 charger gap that we need to be reaching and filling by 2025. Gas stations are an integral part of this. We are in the best locations in areas. We are the best at providing these services to these consumers. We've been doing it for nearly 100 years in the state of California. And I'd like to mention that the UST Cleanup Fund, the Underground Storage Cleanup Fund, it does exist. So I'm not quite sure what the previous speaker was referring to when stating that there is no ability to clean these up. Anybody who is not in that underground storage cleanup fund is mandated by federal law to have private insurance to clean up any of these sites. I would be happy to link up the city council or the organization speaking tonight with the State Water Resources Control Board, USD Cleanup Fund to see what can be done about that site. But the 60,000 charger gap is really a chasm that California needs to make that leap to reach a transitional future. And to deny a just transition for gas stations by saying that no liquid fuels are going to be used in the next 20, 25, 30 years, the entire governor's executive order is where feasible. Right now, it is not feasible. So we are going to have liquid fuels long into the future, whether it's 2050, 2060. These vehicles will still be on the road, and these consumers are still going to need fuel. They're still going to need lower prices. I do encourage you to not get in the way of work that's being done at the state level to make sure that we can meet that 60,000 charger gap. So I do encourage you to consider remaining with your robust CUP process. It sounds like you guys are doing all of the correct research and homework and asking the right questions. So I really don't see a need to put in a moratorium at a time when we're doing our best right now to make up some of the gaps to achieve California's climate goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Chris Bambury. Hi, Chris.
Hello, thank you. Just unmuting there. I'm Chris Banbury, a 11-year American Canyon resident. I see a lot of concern with moving forward with a moratorium or future ban if it escalates to that point. I do see a lot of these developments as being a possible solution to some of the problems here for infrastructure build-outs. So I know nearby we saw the Allied Fuels Plaza get a supercharging station, and the current 3 gas stations referenced do not have any chargers or superchargers or DC fast chargers currently at them. So I think part of the solution is to incorporate in these new builds more infrastructure in the American Canyon area, as many of us, including myself, are looking at EV vehicles in the future. And we are desperately underserved. It was common about food establishments adding chargers to their infrastructure. It's extremely expensive. We've seen out there, it's often $50,000 per charger, plus the electrical hookup, plus the site build out. So a lot of these build outs with new sites could incorporate more infrastructure that we're desperately needing here in American Canyon. And I see that as being more part of the solution than the future problem. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Valerie Zizek. Hi, Valerie.
Hello, thank you for having me tonight. I'm Valerie Zizek, Vice President CEO here at the American Canyon Chamber of Commerce. I'm just chiming in on behalf of the moratorium. I do want everybody to know that we are pro-business here at the American Canyon Chamber, but we're also not for putting gas stations on every corner. We believe that business diversity is something that we need to focus on, but at the same time, we need to take into consideration that our friends at California Capital Investment Group have already invested into American Canyon. They've purchased the property. They are here for the long run. They've partnered with the chamber. They have joined the chamber last year in 2020. I've had many conversations with Ross, not just regarding this project, but regarding what we can do together as a team in the future. And I think it's very important that we remember when we allow businesses to come in and get this far into the process, that we have to treat them respectfully and that we have to make our city a business-friendly city. And that means allowing the process to be easy for our businesses to come in. And by allowing a business to get this far in the process and then pulling out the rug from underneath them is not what we want to be known for. We want to encourage new businesses. We want to develop areas that are not currently being used, but we also have to treat the people with the respect they deserve during this process. So I'm just asking council to take into consideration that if you do choose to put the moratorium on tonight, which I'm not against, I do ask that you please take into consideration that you exclude California Capital with the Circle K project out of this moratorium and let them continue with the construction permits to get their project up and running. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Ava Acosta. Ava?
Hi. Oh, am I supposed to keep my camera off?
No, you can have it on or off. It's up to you.
Oh, okay.
Right now.
Hello, City Council and staff. I am Ava Acosta, a 15-year-old sophomore at American Canyon High School, and I'm speaking on behalf of the ACHS Environmental Club and Napa Schools for Climate Action. In light of these recent actions taken to construct more gas stations in our town, I have become greatly concerned with the outcome that this may present. As said at the last meeting, it is thought that these gas stations should be built now because of the high demand of gas-run vehicles, and later, when electric vehicles demand and rise, we should transition these gas stations into green energy. However, it has come to my attention that all electric vehicles will become our future. As stated by previous panelists, in 2035, only less than 15 years from now, our governor stated that gas vehicles will not be sold in California anymore. And rightfully so. Being a part of Napa County, we have seen the effects firsthand when it comes to climate change. Lest we forget, last fall, we had such a thick haze of smoke that it covered our sun. And fires at New Wells Open Space, which was so close to my own home that I almost had to be evacuated. This should not be normalized. With that being said, should we not take that action now? We have seen what climate change is capable of, and do we want to be contributors to that? Or are we going to be the ones to set the standards and be the example for others? I ask all of you, when will it be too late? When the fires eventually do burn down our homes? As the part of the youth, this directly affects and impacts our future and ways of living. Thank you so much for your time, and I implore you to think of the weight in your decisions.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Ross Hillshine. Hi, Ross.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ross Hillesheim. I own the property at 112 Lombard Road. Thank you for noticing me and allowing me the opportunity to be heard tonight. You've all heard from me, and I don't want to revisit all the specific benefits that my property and project bring, but I do want to highlight a couple things for tonight's meeting. Number one, our business and development is deemed an essential business. During this worldwide pandemic, our Napa County and the state has deemed fuel stations essential businesses. These businesses were open for 24 hours per day to provide essential products and services to people. I think that's something that's often overlooked. Number two, there are usually two major business activities at a fuel station. One is the auto, gasoline, diesel, and biofuel sales. The second is often overlooked, which is the market or the store. My project has entitled a 5,200 square foot market that will sell local goods, bottled beverages, sweet and savory snacks, and fresh prepared foods, bags of ice for road trips, etc. The store will also have 7 to 10 full-time employees. During the process of our conditional use permit approval, we agreed to a local hire initiative, which means we are going to actively go out to the American Canyon workers to look to employ at our service station. Number three, the location of my property provides a unique and in all reality, a difficult site to develop. The site is situated between the busy State Route 29 and the northwest industrial portion of the city. I believe that my property, and specifically the use, is a great buffer and transitional use between the heavy traffic of the highway and the industrial uses to the west. Number 4, the Broadway district-specific plan has very high standards of construction materials, energy-efficient lighting, and energy use guidelines, design and architecture guidelines. My project successfully incorporates all of the high standards of the Broadway district-specific plan, and the Planning Commission relied on that. For over the last 15 months, myself, our staff, and many consultants have worked over what I estimate to be 2,000 combined hours on this project. I am proud of our collaboration with city staff, city stakeholders, and now city elected officials. Back in October of 2020, during the Planning Commission hearing, city staff recommended that the commission approve our project. And I'm very grateful that the Planning Commission at that time did approve the project with a unanimous 5-0 vote. There was no appeal filed after the Planning Commission approval. Therefore, we relied on that approval and mobilized our consultants and time to get the project through ministerial construction approval. Since November of 2020, we have gone through 3 rounds of city staff comments. We've attained a Caltrans right-of-way permit, and we are weeks away from CUPA, ABC, environmental health, and UST permits. It is my belief.
Hi, Ross, your time, your time is up, unless the mayor wishes to allow you to
Finish your statement you were on, sir.
I have
comment you were on.
It's 2 sentences.
I don't want to interrupt you mid-sentence.
Thank you.
Go ahead, proceed.
Thank you. It's my belief that at the February 16th City Council meeting, the council was prepared to carve out my project. I respectfully appreciate that you took the extra time to make sure the language was correct in the ordinance. And tonight, I respectfully ask you to choose alternative 2 if you decide to place a moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Rowley Brody. Hi, Rowley.
Hi. Hello, City Council and staff. My name is Riley Brody. I'm a current 8th grader at Silverado Middle School, and I'm speaking on behalf of the county-wide group Napa Schools for Climate Action. In 2019, our resolution was adopted by the Napa Valley Unified School District. In it, we've incorporated key points to taking action and have identified specific steps that must be taken to combat our climate crisis.
Excuse me, can we increase the volume on the speaker?
Sorry, my bad.
Continue.
Today, I wanted to mention our overreaching goal of meeting net zero emissions by or before the year 2030. As a group, we are appreciative of the Circle K representatives hearing out, making the decision to incorporate bike lanes, bike racks, bike repair stations, and more. However, that does not excuse the fact that this establishment will sell and distribute gasoline. According to a study found in the U.S. National Library of Medicine, exposure to gasoline, both in liquid and vapor form, can cause and contribute to lung, brain, and kidney damage. Additionally, the production and process of putting in these extra features adds to unnecessary pollution factors alongside the gasoline. With this in mind, I believe the alternative 1 of the 45-day moratorium ordinance is the best option for the community. Thank you for hearing my voice.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Emily Bitt. Hi, Emily.
Hi. Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name's Emily Bitts. I'm a current junior at American Canyon High School, and I'm here today to also represent Napa Schools for Climate Action and the ACHS Environmental Club. So as you all may know, I've attended the last 2 meetings along with Elisa Koresh, and we've spoken on the 45-day moratorium ordinance that American Canyon is working to adopt. In recent news, a nearby city, Petaluma, is mobilizing to ban all new gas stations within their community. They have a local grassroots organization called Congas, and you've already heard from Woody today. So basically, they've worked in the past to fight against the new gas station proposals and development that have popped up throughout time. And I'm calling attention to this today because I think that it shows climate change is a very present and real issue that is being taken into serious consideration by our neighboring counties. We believe that Petaluma and Sonoma County as a whole prove that action can be taken and does matter, even on what is thought to be a small scale in comparison to the entire world. In the fall of 2020, Mr. Ross of Circle K stated, "My firm and myself, we take pride in doing quality work and going above and beyond what we think our duty is." This can obviously be seen through the addition of the bike lanes and other biking resources in the approved gas station, which are obviously most definitely appreciated. However, as a longtime citizen of American Canyon and a student at ACHS, and a stakeholder of the future, I believe that it is my duty to go above and beyond to ensure that my community, my family, and my friends will never be put in harm's way because of dangerous and reckless development for a few bucks. Each representative of each gas station has said things along the lines of, "We love American Canyon, we want what's best for the community," etc. However, as some of my peers have said in their comments that were sent via email, no one loves American Canyon more than its citizens. And as a citizen, I will always want what's best for this town and the people that reside in it. Inviting toxic fumes and waste is not what's best by any means. I'm a junior in high school now, and a student like many who are here to speak and listen today. I have an SAT to attend tomorrow morning, homework to complete, studying to do, and a future to think about. But I'm here because this is how passionately I feel about this decision and climate change. I deeply hope that you all understand where I, along with so many other people, are coming from and feel the same. American Canyon has the chance to be the change, and we have the opportunity to be the first in our county once again to make progressive decisions that show we are a respectable and attentive city. I hope you all consider alternative one, for it is not a harsh no to Circle K, but it's a how can we think deeper to better benefit this community. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Alyssa? Hi, Alyssa.
Hello. So my name is Elisa Koresh, and I'm a junior at Napa High School. I'm the other co-president of Napa Schools for Climate Action, and as Emily Bitts said, I've been here before. I'm very excited to see the City Council's dedication to the 45-day temporary moratorium and the anticipated progress in our county. Even though both alternatives of the ordinance will support a transition away from fossil fuels, which I'm very happy about, going through the first alternative of the ordinance to temporarily ban all of the new gas station proposals and permits will offer the community much more benefits. Going through with it might not only seem just not fair to the Circle K gas station, but also most likely might bring up concerns about the revenue that the city would receive from a new gas station. Even though this is understandable, when looking at the facts about climate change and weighing out the benefits and negatives for the community, it is clear that the benefits outweigh the negatives significantly. As pretty much directly quoted from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, impacts from climate change are happening now. These impacts extend well beyond an increase in temperature, affecting ecosystems and communities in the United States and around the world. Things that we depend upon and value, such as water, energy, transportation, wildlife, agriculture, ecosystems, and human health are all experiencing the effects of a changing climate. Based on this quote, in short, climate change is only starting to show its true power. An example of one way that climate change has already begun affecting our county are the yearly extreme wildfires. These wildfires are not the norm and clearly have detrimental effects in our communities. All of the air pollution released, all of the businesses, homes, and other buildings destroyed by the flames, and all of the other resulting negative health impacts that people experience during the fires are really not worth another gas station. Improving the construction of yet another gas station will only fuel global warming, and as a result, the wildfires too. Human health is at stake. Besides overall contributing to the change in the environment, as directly stated by the U.S. Energy Information Administration, gasoline is a toxic and highly flammable liquid. American Canyon already has 3 gas stations in a relatively small area, and adding another gas station will only increase the exposure to the toxic substance. Is this truly what American Canyon wants? Even if the building outside is beautiful, what truly matters is its function and what it contributes to the community. It is still just a gas station. The community's health is much more important. We must be moving away from fossil fuels, and building another gas station is slowing down the process that should be increasing in its momentum. Thank you so much for all your hard work and dedication.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Sophia. Hi, Sophia.
Can you hear me?
You can turn up the volume a little bit.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sophia Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Sophia Rapcon, and I am a junior at American Canyon High School, as well as a lifelong advocate for the environment. I am here to express my concerns surrounding the discussion of potentially cutting the Circle K gas station from the 45-day moratorium proposal. Doing so is completely counterproductive and unnecessary, as our small town already has 3 fully established gas stations. Our community does not need new gas stations, and they are significant contributors to the global climate crisis. Gasoline is made up of fossil fuels that will pollute the air when burned. And while there may be a current demand for gas stations, they are guaranteed to decrease in popularity, with leaders such as Gavin Newsom pushing for more electric vehicles on the road in coming years. I've noticed some people here mention what we can do in the future, but why should we delay the action we must inevitably take simply because of current demands? Additionally, toxins from the new cement will seep into the soil underneath, leading to more greenhouse gas emissions. In a previous meeting, a representative of Circle K stated that the company would work to restore the soil after the gas station was removed, but doing so in a reasonable amount of time is a near impossible task. The toxins that would be released into the soil simply cannot be removed from it in any reasonable amount of time, and the problem would not be solved by simply moving the soil to a new location either. Why would we make it more difficult for ourselves to transition to green energy in the future? While these gas stations may help our local economy, we should not be valuing any economic status over the health of our citizens and the health of our climate. Therefore, excluding Circle K gas stations from the 45-day moratorium is an unwise decision. Please take our environment into consideration and vote for Alternative 1. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Isaac Moraes, and I am here on behalf of pushing Alternative 2 on this order. I think that Alternative 2 is a good option because as a student of American Canyon Middle School, I personally, I ride my bike everywhere. That's my means of transportation. I like to go to the gas station with my friends. I like to go get like snacks and stuff with my friends. There's no real good place to go get stuff like that because a lot of these places around town do not have bike locks. I live on the west side of the freeway. I do not feel safe traveling to the other side of the freeway to get to the other gas stations. I personally feel that the Circle K at this location would help me personally because then it will get bike locks and bike things into this new gas station, which would really push a lot of bikers and kids like me to be at this gas station. And another thing is a lot of people are saying that gas cars are going to be not sold in California by 2035. I feel that this is not true, it's true possibly to an extent, but there'll still be cars on the road that are gas powered. Just because that there's going to be no cars sold in America or in California that are gas powered doesn't mean that there's not going to be them on the road. There will still be those cars on the road and they will need a way to fuel up. If we still have these gas stations, those cars will be able to fill up. We can also add electric chargers for the Teslas and other electric cars that will be incorporated into the new 2035 Act. There will be other ways to accommodate the other cars. Right now, I feel like it's best to think now and think of what we could do right now for the present. We could think about the future when the future comes. The future will be coming pretty soon. we can add on to accommodate for the future. It'll just be, we just got to see when time comes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mr. Mayor and American City Council members, my name is Skylar Sanders, and I work with Mr. Hillesheim, and I'm a partner in the project that is occurring at the junction of Napa Junction and Lombard. I'm also an avid outdoorsman, cyclist, and father of 3 little children. We hear from a lot of people, why a gas station at this project? The simple answer is that prior to it being a gas station, we did in fact reach out to a number of other companies, including Starbucks, Pete's, Trader Joe's, and a host of others to see if they would be interested in being located at our property. Given the awkwardness of the property and number of other restricting factors, the companies did not have any interest. Circle K, however, was interested in investing millions of dollars into the community in order to bring essential services to the city and its citizens. Prior to our purchase of the property, we worked with city staff to confirm that our project would comply with the Broadway-specific EIR, a project programmatic EIR. We hired environmental consultants and other professionals to confirm that our project would not have any significant environmental impact. The conclusion of the studies as incorporated into the city's staff report was that there would be no significant impact of our project. Following 2 planning commission hearings, our project was unanimously approved by the commission. Since the approval of our CUP, which was not appealed, we have been full steam ahead in obtaining our construction permits. There's been a lot of discussion tonight about our project in particular. I would ask the city council to rely on the capable work previously done by the city and its staff, as well as Mr. Ross, and move forward with alternate 2 if the city does in fact elect to proceed with a moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Jim Wilson. Hi, Jim.
Hi. Mayor Garcia and council members, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Jim Wilson. I live in Napa and I'm a member of 350 Bay Area in Napa Climate Now. I'm an advisor to Schools for Climate Action, the student group committed to mobilizing the community in accordance with Napa Valley Unified School District's climate emergency resolution calling for net zero climate pollution before 2030. We're now living with mega fires, record-breaking heat and drought. Rising seas are breaching our shores. We don't need further research to tell us that more is on the way. Restoring a livable climate demands a new emergency stance. Policies that protect communities and address inequities that make and keep people, our children especially, increasingly vulnerable. Carbon pollution continued to climb last year in spite of La Nina and the pandemic to 415 parts per million CO2. This is totally unacceptable. More suffering is resulting. The truth is vexing, but we adults must reflect on our mistakes and now make amends. With the knowledge that we're late, I urge the City Council to adopt Alternative 1, to deny a construction permit ultimately for Circle K gas station and to deny permits to build even more gas stations beyond that in American Canyon. We're beginning to see governments choosing humanity over economics in a significant way. Petaluma just banned new gas stations in their city. Clear scientific evidence about the consequences for people's lives was persuasive in changing their policy direction. When it comes to the climate emergency, the lives most at risk are not those of our friends and families, but of our children and future generations. My first grandson is being born as we speak. Bill McKibben, founder of 350.org, said, quote, "Winning slowly is the same as losing. End quote. The turning point lies within your grasp. American Canyon must reach out and take it. As we sit here contemplating more gas stations, we know that climate breakdown will not be forgiving if we squander the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
There are no further comments.
No further.
1 second, Mayor. Patrick Van raised his hand.
Very good.
Hi, Patrick.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. Patrick Band, Executive Director, Napa County Bicycle Coalition. I would like to just make a couple of quick comments as it relates to the work that the Bicycle Coalition does and the decision before you tonight. Although we worked extensively with the Circle K developers and I think reached an equitable consensus to include some bicycle and transportation improvements as part of that project. What we really want to think about is what is the appropriate use of the Broadway corridor for the city, and what is the highest and best use as it relates to getting people around the community. As you know, we work extensively on the countywide Safe Routes to Schools program, and one of the largest barriers we identify in the city of American Canyon is getting kids east-west across the highway. Adding businesses that will only increase vehicle volumes and have high throughput on their driveways is going to create an additional barrier to safe east-west connections for youth. I also want to point out the significant growth that the city needs to see in the number of pedestrians and bicyclists to meet our adopted bike plan and pedestrian plan goals. The city adopted bike plan calls for a 10% mode share for bicyclists by 2035. Right now, in the city of American Canyon, that number is less than 1%. We have a huge amount of work to do. And so while we're agnostic as to any specific project that might come before the city council in the future, we definitely want to make sure that when you are making a decision tonight, that you take into account the role of the businesses that are located on those key intersections and the safety of our kids as they're traveling to and from school. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other speakers identified?
There are no additional speakers.
I think we'll pause for a moment just in case somebody might catch up.
Right.
So we move into our council discussion. Everybody, if I don't have anybody here in the next moment or two. Nobody else has indicated they want to speak.
No, there are no hands raised.
Well, I'll close public comment at this point. We'll move on to council discussion. Mr. Cooper, if you could put up the that slide you have that gave what the three options were, or had the option 1, option 2. I think that'd be helpful with our discussion. There we go. So we'll move now into council discussion with public comment closed. Council, how would you like to proceed with this? We need to have some more discussion around alternative 1, alternative 2. Is there a full understanding of that? Any comments about the value of those? I think would be beneficial to our discussion. Adopting no alternative leads to things that say are at the moment, because it's strictly subject to conditional use permit, status quo.
I'll start the dialogue going. First of all, I appreciate all the public input because, as we all know, we often get no input at all. So it's always good to hear from everyone. And I'm going to bring up the idea that I think I'm the one who actually suggested that we actually take an action on a possible moratorium so that we can study this a little further. And I do think that's the right action. I do think gas stations, the typical gas station model is going away, and we need to be progressive enough to address it sooner rather than later. And I do think that if we consider a moratorium, the part of that report that we'll get back within 45 days needs to focus on kind of the behavior we want to encourage more so than the behaviors we want to outlaw. So two particular issues that need to be looked at, in my opinion, is how do we get more EV chargers installed? I think one of the speakers talked about a 60,000 EV charger gap. Another gentleman talked about the high cost of installing them. So I would definitely like to hear from staff in their analysis more on that whole issue of how do we get the EV chargers in this community? Do we look at it in parking lots? Can it be done at a fueling station? How does that look in terms of the future directions? The other one is the potential reuse of any existing fuel stations. Councilmember Washington and I were lucky enough to be at the Climate Action Committee last week and heard a very exciting story about hydrogen and the potential down the road that there could be vehicles that run on a fuel cell that uses hydrogen, and that hydrogen could literally be pumped into cars of the future in a very similar business model to what you have a gasoline station. So it appears down the road there could be a viable reuse of the gas station, albeit there'd be some serious retrofitting, but at least the business model could still exist. So I do think it's important that we move forward with a moratorium. I do think we need to analyze some of these issues, and we need to encourage policies and ordinances that will facilitate the EV charging, that transition to electric. But the real issue, I think, has morphed into whether Circle K should be included in that moratorium or not. I think I indicated last week or 2 weeks ago my preference to carve it out. And the reason is very simple in my mind. That is, they went through the process. The Planning Commission certainly exacted concessions above and beyond. And I think they've gone through the process. That with the Planning Commission approval, with the the appeal process over, I do believe that they've kind of gone through the process. Had we been talking about this 6 months ago, good, bad, or otherwise, I would have supported throwing them in with everyone else. But because they've gone through the process, I think it's only fair to leave them out for this review. And I also think we need to be careful about messages that we send. Certainly the public health is important, but we also need to make sure our business community understands that once we've made a commitment that they can rely on it. We've had a lot of people talk about the need for more restaurants and other businesses, but in order to pull that off, we're going to have to make sure that they know once they get an okay that they can rely on it. So that's where I'm coming from right now, even after all the discussion and comments that I've heard. And I do think that alternative 2 for me is the most reasonable approach to take, all things considered. That's my point.
No, I appreciate the comments this evening as well. Particularly, I noticed a lot of our young people, our students are certainly getting a very solid base on understanding what the environmental issues and concerns are. Comments from the community as well were helpful for my understanding. Vice Mayor, your comment on business is certainly a factor. Certainty is what they rely on in terms of being able to be successful. And I can think back on the Planning Commission's addressing this matter before them. We appoint commissioners to the Planning Commission in this case, who have they are empowered to make decisions of a quality of what type of development we want in American Canyon. I would look at this also as an opportunity with the moratorium to have that meeting of the commission and the city council to address our concerns and our vision, making sure that we're aligned. You know, I trust a lot in their process. I know they're very deliberate people who serve us as well on that commission. And I think there's a level of trust in the process that I think we need to respect as well. But yeah, ultimately it does fall on the city council. And I think some of the comments I heard, though, frankly, I'm having a bit of time understanding it. And, you know, actually several times I would say no gas cars will be sold in 2030. No new gasoline powered cars will be sold. There's going to be around for a long time. How many thousands, tens of thousands, who knows, 100,000s, gasoline powered cars are on the freeway today, driving to and from work, in all of California, let alone just the Bay Area here. Will we transition out of that? Most certainly we will, but it's going to take time to do it. And I think our ability to do that, to me, it seems like we're just very on the edge of identifying what the problem is. We haven't put together the plan, the implementation that addresses moving forward on moving into electric powered vehicles. I look forward to that. I think it's a movement we will make, but it's not at a point where you have, for example, 60,000, as Mr. Bayless said, a gap in charging systems. Technology will change along the way as well. I think we encourage that. Greatest consumption for gasoline in automobiles is a commuter going to and from work, from their home to work. And in the Bay Area, we got folks commuting from our way to Sacramento into the Bay Area, and from like Stockton, and some point south of that even, into the South Bay Area. Why? Housing. See, if you want to cut the commute time, which averages anywhere between an hour to an hour and a half to get to work, in half, build it closer to where people work. And that is another battle that we also have to fight. So we're not addressing, I don't think, the full complexity of the issue in terms of why there's such a need for gasoline-powered vehicles at this point. We have a transit system that operates efficiently. I believe in the Bay Area, there are 9 different systems, transit system. Our recovery on our fare box for the Napa Valley Transportation Authority is right around 15%, which means 85% is subsidized by public tax dollars. Why don't people use transit? Why not? Isn't there more car ride sharing going on? Those are address issues that would likewise address reducing carbon pollution in the atmosphere. My comments for now.
I'd like to go next, and I'll try to be short.
Sure, Councilman Washington.
Yeah, and I want to thank all the speakers tonight that shared their thoughts and processes for their decision making on coming to some type of conclusion on what they would like to have. I particularly like Mr. Hastings' analogy of smoking and tobacco. Similar to the no smoking movement that highlighted the dangers of secondhand smoke. This no more gas station movement raises awareness as well of health, climate, and equity, and how gasoline impacts us. And I would say to those who mention that we've come too far with our contract to get this company, Circle K, in place. I agree. We've probably come pretty far. But I ask you this: if Pfizer had found that it had a issue with the vaccine, would you tell them to continue with it? I think the answer would be no, because it would be a hazard to the people. So when you hear what facts or what the residents are asking for, I think we need to be careful and listen. We've been elected in these positions to do just that. I feel this would be an enormous movement to protect our community and the climate from fossil fuels. So I will be supporting the alternative one that we talked about. So not to be, I know everybody on the call or everybody on this virtual wants to see what type of decisions this council is going to make. So I'm making my statement brief, and I will be making my motion shortly.
Thanks. I'll go next. I think we all have to go back to how this came forward to us. And along the way, in the past 3 weeks or the past month or so, got a little convoluted, right? First of all, a lot of the comments were accusing us of approving gas stations across the board, all 6 projects. Actually, what was asked of the council was a recommendation by the Planning Commission, and to their credit, they came to us after approving a gas station. Should there be more gas stations in American Canyon? Because we have 2 more in the pipeline for a total of 6. So on a 5-0 vote, they voted yes for this Circle K project. And mind you, there's, a committee on there that has students, teachers, as well as environmentalists on there. And they worked really hard. And they did a great job as a planning commission to make that the best project possible, taking into account the weird teardrop structure and the mitigation that has to happen there on that corner lot. And quite frankly, I'm not sure what else could go there outside of that, unless it's a quick service restaurant, and I'm not sure anybody wants that easier. So the council's task was to ask, what should we move forward for? And there's 2 choices tonight. There's actually 3, but there's really 2. And everyone on this council is in favor of a moratorium. Everyone on this council is not in favor of having a gas station alley. There was a lot of emails accusing the council of just creating this sort of fuel station as if it was, an Indy 500 race and every car and driver got their own gas station. And it's not that case. What we're asking for is, just to providing direction and taking a pause in terms of this moratorium, which I believe will end up being permanent. Whether we choose one more gas station, if we choose one more gas station, I can almost guarantee there won't be another gas station in town. So with that said, and with that clarity, I wanted to say that agree with Council Member Joseph's or Vice Mayor Joseph's response. This is bigger than just one gas station. This is one of the very first big items for us as a council in terms of implementing the Broadway District Specific Plan. The Broadway District Specific Plan over the next 10 years or so is to invite and improve that highway, to create opportunities for investment to come in so that the road is prettier, that there's walkable paths and pathways. And if we say no to an already approved project today, what message do we say to the 24 other opportunities that we have for investment? If I'm an investor coming in, and I got an apartment complex, and then people say, you know what, I don't want any more housing, but you already have your permit, you've been approved by the council, and then we're going to pull the rug out of them. I don't think that's a very good message to say. And then, so that's something that I have been thinking about. And I've been thinking about the future too. And I want to commend all of the speakers that came forward today. I love it. It's great. It's very rare that we get an opportunity to hear from so many people. And I agree with what they're saying. But in this game and in this as policymakers and what we think about, sometimes it's not necessarily an either or the other side. There's this meeting in the middle. And I think this is a classic opportunity for us to actually have a compromise, right? To where we say, you know what, we don't want any more gas stations while we're respecting the one that we've already approved. And that, I think, is going to happen for us. And this is a compromise that we get to make and we get to have where we're honoring the process that was already done, while putting in a new process and a new moratorium that allows us to revisit this here in the future. And the city of Petaluma has taken a stance on this as well. You know, and I don't think we want to be in any way a gas station, Nelly. So I think there's a good compromise on alternative 2. I guess that's what we're calling it right now, where we can honor the process that we have put in place and then move forward on a better future for all of us. Thank you.
I guess it's my turn.
Yes. Councilmember Aladamas.
I'm having a really difficult time with this decision, to be honest. And I love seeing the level of community engagement that we're getting on this issue. And frankly, it's refreshing to see that I'm not the only one struggling with this decision. Our residents seem to be split between options 1 and option 2. I agree with what Councilmember Joseph said regarding and also Valerie from the chamber said about us not wanting to be the city that revokes projects after they've been approved. I totally agree with that, and I don't want to be that city. But at the same time, I agree with what Councilmember Washington was saying. The first time we talked about this, and I'm sorry, Mark, but I'm the one that called for the moratorium. And I'm the one that said, I am disappointed in the Planning Commission's decision, and if we could, then we should totally revisit it. And this is our opportunity to revisit it. And so going with alternative 2 would mean that Circle K goes forward, and once it goes forward, we can't stop it anymore. Going with alternative 1 means that we have 45 more days to decide what we're going to do. And that could still mean Circle K moving forward, but we have the option still. And I honestly don't know. I don't know where I am right now. I'm very torn on this decision. I hate the fact that there's already 3 council members who appear to be in favor of option 2 and 1 council member who's in favor of option 1. And we need a 4/5 vote. I hate feeling like I'm the swing vote, no pressure. But I don't know where I am with this right now. I would appreciate more council discussion. Please persuade me one way or the other. But I'm not, if we were to vote right now, I would probably go with alternative 1 because I feel like alternative 2 gives us another gas station, whether we want it in 45 days or not. And option 1 gives us the option of deciding whether 45 days from now we want to continue with Circle K or not.
Yeah, you know, again, that's why I preface the whole thing with what the Planning Commission has done, right? And the responsibility that we gave them, and then they even took it a step further by coming back to us for what it would be. 5 members of that board, some of them have been there for many years, have negotiated for us a great project on a tough corner, right? With, I believe there's bike lanes and wider streets, right? Because it's a really funky corner right there. And if you think about, the Oat Hill residents, right? They don't have to cross the highway now to get convenience store stuff or walk down to 7-Eleven or something there. But for me, it comes down to respecting that process of the Planning Commission and doing what they have asked. Right now, if we make this decision, if you go for 1, you sort of override that whole process and do that. I'm not necessarily ready to do that, but I am ready to provide guidance that they were asking for about the future of gas stations, right? And I think it came at a right time. And I think another thing on this process here is actually a bigger thing. We need to get a grasp on exactly how Broadway district-specific plan is implemented, right? And I think there's some hotels there. There's, like, where are my sidewalks? And now that, Caltrans isn't going to widen the highway, how do we build sidewalks and bike lanes and things like that? And I think there's a time to revisit that. That's just how I am approaching it, keeping in mind the changes in the future. And I think another thing too, I think we underestimate how fast, we as a society can pivot, adopt, and change, right? So there's a lot of talk about electrical charging stations and electrical vehicles, and putting more of those in. And I think we will get those, right? They probably should have been included in this one, And I'm hopeful that, you know, the applicant may do that, at least put one or two in the near future. But if we get to that point, until we get to that time, you know, market forces will dictate that, and we will pivot towards that. I mean, hell, in just this past year, we all stopped going to work, right? And we learned how to Zoom, and we learned how to do these things. It was hard, it was tough, but, you know, we were able to pull it off. So
it's been a learning curve for us.
Yeah. I mean, I think you will get there. So that's kind of how I've been thinking about it, you know. And I think Councilmember Washington talked about Pfizer saying something wrong with their drug and stuff. I don't know if that's a
no. I didn't say something was wrong with their drug.
No,
I
I'm
said
saying
had something been wrong with their drug. That's cool correctly now.
Yeah. I just think if there was, you know, I think there could be a better analogy of that, and I'm just not getting that part. And then I think the last thing I'd say too, to a lot of the speakers are talking about the Governor Newsom's 2035, you know, mandate for electric vehicles. All for that, but we got to remember that's an executive order; it's not law. A new governor can change that, and who knows, in the future we may not get there, and that could be rescinded at any time as well. So, you know, it's you know, like we're doing two things here, right? We're allowing this process to happen. We're also taking a stance on the future in terms of, for both the Broadway district specific plan and not allowing to have more gas stations here, you know, making an environmental stance. So that's why I brought up that whole conversation about a compromise in the middle ground.
I'd like to make another comment. I had to look this up. There's another saying that comes to mind given the situation, and that is, what is it? Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I think it's relevant here because what we're really considering is a moratorium on any future gas stations. That's a pretty big action that we're contemplating. And if we get caught up in the fact that we're allowing a project that's already been approved to go through while we're saying everything else is potentially off the table, I think we need to focus on the fact that as a group, we're talking about no more future gas stations. And I think we need to focus on the significance of that action and not get caught up in the idea, well, we should have just gotten rid of Circle K because they're a gas station too. In fairness, they're a gas station with a convenience store that's gone through a lot of processing and has received their approvals from the city. So I really do think there's a compelling argument to say Circle K doesn't apply for no other reason than they've already gone through the process. And so we're, as Councilmember Oro pointed out, we're now being asked, what do we do going forward? And going forward, I think as a body, we're probably unanimous on saying there should be a moratorium on anything else. And I think when we do that review and analysis, we're probably going to make it permanent because of the very compelling arguments made by the students and everyone else who just spoke tonight. So I guess that's the point I want to emphasize. We're really making potentially a very big decision. And we shouldn't feel as if it's been neutralized because we're letting somebody through the process because they already went through the process, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We need to be fair.
Yeah.
You know, Vice Mayor Joseph, I just would add to that, you know, that's also going to have a huge impact, I think, on business sense of certainty and economic development along the corridor. I mean, many of the comments I read, and I appreciate where they're coming from, but we're a city 20,000, yes, but our economy is regional based. You know, I seriously doubt we'd have a Walmart or Safeway here in town if it was just 20,000 people. What we get is shoppers coming from the region that benefits our economy. Same thing, anything that happens along Broadway specific plan is going to be more of a regional impact. Not only community serving locals, but those that come through town. There's 50,000 cars a day come through American Canyon. You know, the 50,000 are going south. There's only one gas station on the west side of the highway. That's at Safeway. You know, I know in environmental discussions, I know it is not the de rigueur often to talk about the economics of it, but there's a reality that we all face. You know, there are particular commodities, needs that people have in their life that they have to buy. There are people who are in business to sell that. What we do with the here at American Canyon is apply standards that we expect of all those who come and apply for business opportunity. Your point well taken. I mean, we need to, it's a big decision in front of us that will have a huge impact down the road.
Yeah.
I think moving forward with the applicant who's already been approved at the level they are, we need to follow that commitment.
Yeah. I just want to just piggyback off of what Vice Mayor Joseph said. He said something about perfection into progress. I immediately thought about when I was applying to be when I was appointed to council. In my application, I said I actually criticized the city for having a perfectionist mindset to get in the way of progress. So I echo that, and it's a tough one to have, you know, because you want it the best way, and these things are really hard to control over time. But I think we're doing good. We're doing good here, right? We are looking at a moratorium. We're actually looking at potentially, and I strongly believe this, you know, no more gas stations after Circle K. Like, you know, I mean, with this amount of work and input, and then just how I envision the city, and I think how we envision the city, right? Is it reasonable to have bookends of gas stations at the end of town, 2 on each side? I think so, right? So again, that middle ground, right? Is the compromise is the word I think I'm using here.
Mayor, I'd like to see who to call to question.
Sorry to hear you. Again, please.
I would like to ask you to call to question. A roll call for the vote.
Is there a motion made on, shall we deal with the alternative one first?
Yeah, Mayor Garcia, I'd like to make a motion to adopt an interim urgency ordinance that imposes a 45-day temporary moratorium prohibiting new fuel stations as shown in alternative 1, attachment 1.
Is there a second? I would take there's no response. I hear no second for the motion. That motion does not pass.
Then, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we, I guess, adopt ordinance number 2021 next in order, an interim urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of American Canyon, California, enacted pursuant to California Government Code Section 65858, establishing a 45-day temporary moratorium on the approval of discretionary applications for new fuel stations that are not complete as of the effective date of the ordinance in all zoning districts in the City of American Canyon, pending review and possible amendment of municipal code regulations, and setting forth the facts constituting such urgency. In other words, alternative 2.
Second.
Motion second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Miriam Abadamos.
I want to qualify my vote first. I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to say yes because I do believe this is progress. It's unfair. I genuinely believe it's unfair to say no to a project that we've already approved. And so not allowing any more gas stations in American Canyon moving forward is progress. And I think we're helping pave the way for that. So I'm going to vote yes with that caveat.
Councilmember David Oro.
Yes.
Councilmember Pierre Washington.
I'm going to say that I want the youth of the community to know that I thank you for standing up and your voice is heard and will continue to be heard. No.
Vice Mayor Mark Joseph.
And I would say the same thing. They have been heard, and I do think that their point has been well made, but I'm still going to vote yes.
Mayor Garcia.
I think everybody who spoke this evening, and I know it was sincere effort on everybody's part. and I'll vote yes to support this. Well, that concludes this part of our public hearing this evening. I really do want to thank everybody who came and participated. I know it's a very important issue to everyone. And I do appreciate all our council members' input on this. Not an easy decision, I think, but one that was very well vetted by all of us. And I think we gave an honest, sincere input in terms of how we felt about it. Thank you.
And Mayor Garcia, if I could also just clarify direction to staff for our subsequent report before the conclusion of the 45-day. I have notes to bring back a report to talk about implementing needed EV charging stations, and then reuse of fuel stations, potentially for alternative fuels such as hydrogen. Were there any other issues that you'd have to be sure that we include in our report?
Yeah, and so, you know, I mean, I think, I don't know if this is appropriate to ask, so Mr. Ross, check me if it's not true or if I need to stop, but, you know, back to all the people that spoke to us, particularly, you know, the future of our world and the youth of American Canyon, those who spoke up. Can we bring forward alternative, a permanent moratorium at this time and have council vote on that, much like the city of Petaluma has? I'm ready to do that.
Ready too.
Yeah, that would be an option at the 45-day hearing process. Yes.
And although not part of that report, a suggestion that was made here is if it's possible between now and that 45 days to possibly have a joint meeting with the Planning Commission to discuss what our mutual vision of the Broadway specific plan is, and get on with the process of developing an implementation plan of identifying the uses we want to see and how we're going to encourage them, as well as identifying the uses we don't want to see. Yeah,
we need to, I think for all of us, I think we need to sync with the Planning Commission.
Yeah, I think that's an appropriate next step, and that will make it easier to bring forward a permanent ban as needed, right? And also gets us much quicker to building out that VDSP part.
Right, yeah. As a kind of a concurrent process, I know it's not unique to this moratorium, but it needs to be done concurrently so that, frankly, we don't have to go through another one of these again, that will identify what we don't want to have and make sure it's not part of that package.
You know, that's a good point, Vice Mayor. We need to know, identify what we want, not come around and identify what we don't want.
Yeah.
That's the part of the conversation I think we need to have with the Planning Commission. That's my view of syncing up.
It's better to do that before there's an application and before us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is what business is looking for. Are we ready now to move on to our business items?
Mayor, can we take like a 5-minute break?
Well, certainly. What? Oh, we're going to yes. We've been at this for quite a while. We'll have a break for 5 minutes. We'll be back here at just want to give it to about 8:25. Get a couple of minutes more. Round it off. Very good.
And a reminder to all council members, we will be live no matter what. So turn off your mics and all that stuff.
Thank you.
Is everybody return for break? Oh, there you are. Okay, good. All right, we're all back. Yeah, after sitting down for a while, just got to get up and stretch.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to business items. Item D1, adopt a resolution appropriating $11,500 from the general fund undesignated fund balance and authorizing city manager to enter into a professional services agreement with the Municipal Resource Group, MRG, in the amount not to exceed $11,500 to assist the city council in exploring options related to term limits.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item is a follow-up to your January 19th council item, where the council had a preliminary discussion on a potential idea related to term limits for future city council candidates and council members. And so the council provided direction to staff to begin the initiation of that process, and then going back and looking at the council direction and looking at the issue more fully. What staff is recommending is that we bring in someone with expertise and experience in elections, and someone who is a neutral third party who can come in and help facilitate this conversation. I'll note that the discussion back in January was not unanimous, and there is a wide range of opinions on the council and presumably in the public. And so bringing in someone outside of my office, outside of City Hall, to come in and facilitate that conversation is the best way to ensure that everyone feels like the process was fair and deliberate and had an opportunity to be heard. We don't know yet where this process may go, and opinions and perspectives may change or they may not. But ultimately, bringing in someone to come in and facilitate this is going to be really the most efficient way of doing that. So we've in the past consulted with MRG, consulting firm on a variety of issues. MRG is staffed with a number of folks who are usually retired city professionals from one walk of life or another. And we have a proposal from MRG from a longtime respected city clerk in the business who will come in and help facilitate us in this conversation. The amount of their proposal is $11,500, and it's staff's recommendation that we engage with MRG to help facilitate the next steps if that's what council chooses to do. The potential scope of work was listed there in the staff report, and I won't belabor the point about the potential options or potential work, but if there are additional questions, certainly happy to answer them.
Questions from council?
I have a couple of comments. First of all, I'm not really excited about spending a lot of money to analyze this, but I did discuss this with the city manager, and he does make a good point that if, in a divided decision as it was, it may not be appropriate to ask staff to weigh in on one side or the other. On the other hand, I don't think there's merit to having like a subcommittee. It almost seems like we should use MRG to simply analyze all the alternatives, certainly working with staff to get some insights into what's unique about our community, but ultimately to give us a paper on all the different alternatives and options and maybe some pros and cons, again, so that we can make a more reasoned decision. I just don't know if we need ad hoc committees or meetings, because for no other reason, whoever you put on the ad hoc committee, you may get an outcome one way or the other. So for me, I think if we just use them as experts who could analyze and offer alternatives, to me that would be their best value, and maybe not for 11.5.
Yeah, I would probably have to agree with Vice Mayor Joseph. I think that it's a non-biased company. They will make their determination from a professional standpoint, not a personal standpoint. And so I would agree with Vice Mayor Joseph.
Is the representative not here tonight from MRG?
No, I told them they didn't need to be here this evening. I have a clear understanding of their scope of work and their expertise. I helped draft the scope of work for them and asked them to propose on it. So I asked them not to attend, really in a cost saving measure. So I know, we're definitely trying to contain the scope of work and the costs, and certainly, they bill on an hourly basis. So if there are less meetings, obviously there's going to be less costs.
Well, I mean, and for me, that's the reason why I think we need to have a meeting, because I want a better understanding of the pros and cons of this, and an understanding of what they will look at. I saw what you outlined, the 6 things here, but I still think that the committee can work on things, because right now we're asking for, we're making a change in the will of the people, right? The people will vote every year and they elect somebody. And right now, if we do term limits and we cancel out somebody who's termed out, those people can't vote on that person again. And also, I think we brought up last time other things that we ought to explore if we're going to go down this path, right? Districting is one of those things, right? I was hoping that I came prepared tonight with a bunch of questions for MRG in terms of what we can actually achieve for this whole process. And one of the questions I had, in the staff report is what are we trying to achieve, and when are we trying to achieve it by? I think there's an existential question of why we are doing this. Right? There's arguments in favor and against and before. And I want to know if we can answer that for the public in whatever report or system, output that they will have. And, I think, I just have a lot more questions, and I thought we were going to ask that. Maybe add that.
I just would say, I think we need to be fully informed on it. So what venue, what process gives us the best understanding, move forward with our decision.
Yeah.
How do we transfer that to the community as a whole?
And that's the purpose of the scope of work we have proposed, is to provide that information so that the council can be informed. That first item, that would literally be their first task. They would come to a council meeting to ask the 5 of you that question: what are you trying to achieve, and when are you trying to achieve it by? That they don't know the answer to that question, and I don't know what the answer to that question is either. And we're talking about the consensus of the council now. We've heard the individual council members, but my point is they've provided a scope of work for work they're going to do. They haven't already done that work and won't have answers, to those questions until the work is done.
All right. So what we're looking at is, I'm looking at their proposal now, which is basically the 6 things that you put on there.
Correct.
So we're asking. So we're going to spend $11,000 for them to come back for us for a scoping session, which I would think that they would. I mean, it sounds like to me that they are, if they're MRG and they know what they're doing, they already know they should be able to pull out of their back pocket term limits, and this is how the process works, and here's what are the things you can consider, because they have the capabilities for that.
Well, I'm assuming they've done it before.
Sure. Again, when you hire a neutral third-party expert, they provide information. They do work for you and give you that information. All of these situations are unique. The basics of, we talked about it in January. The basics of term limits is something that would go to the voters. It's something that the process that the council could do or an initiative could do. So we talked about those basics, but what they're going to drill into is what does this council and or potentially the community want on these very specific issues. That's something they don't have in their back pocket to answer. They're not invested in American Canyon. They don't know all of the local issues, all of the things that may come into play that will make it relevant for here. This isn't, it's not going to be a scoping session on term limits 101, meaning the academic conversation about what are term limits. Their proposal is to say, what do term limits mean for American Canyon in 2022? Like that specificity, which they don't have in their file cabinet anywhere, but they would develop, that that syllabus and that program, or 2024, et cetera. That's what I meant.
Okay, so when will the council? So how would they do the scoping session with city council? Is that in public forum, or is that in a 2x2, or what's the best way to do that?
Well, certainly they could meet individually with council members. What they have scoped is a scoping session in person, so at a city council meeting in public. That's what the original scope was intended to be around, because, again, we heard in January some interest in the public on this issue. Staff came at it from a perspective that the council, in fact, there was discussion amongst the council having a citizen steering committee. And so, we were taking the perspective that the council would want to have these scoping sessions in public and gather public input as well, because, again, presumably the council's interest in pushing this forward is representing what you're hearing from constituents, and it would be the opportunity for constituents to also bring their perspectives to this, not just the individual council members. So that's why what's in the scope now is a public meeting, a city council meeting, where they're not just asking the council, what are you trying to achieve and when are you trying to achieve it? They're asking the community through the council, through public comment. That same question.
So Jason, if you remember, I also talked to you about this and the need to hire a consultant to do something that we've directed staff to do. And I completely understand the logic behind it, but I think that this is more than what we're asking for. And since you said that they bill hourly, maybe there's potential here to save some money. I think that they can just go back and watch the council meeting where we had the discussion and bring back a report giving us all of our options, and we can go from there and discuss it as a council from there. Does that make sense? And maybe they can be present at that meeting and present to us the options, because if I remember correctly, the council talked about what we want presented to us, and we already gave staff direction. And if we weren't hiring a consultant, staff would do the work and come back. There would be no need for another scoping session, no need for more subcommittees, no need for a check-in. We would just get a staff report at our next meeting. And I think that's what we were looking for.
Sure. The council.
That would be where I'm at with it. I'm sorry. I think there's a whole community out there who has to weigh in on this issue as well. And their concerns and interests need to be heard.
Yeah, and I think I hear you correct, Councilmember Alvarez. I hear you on what you're saying on the staff report, but my thinking evolved over time, and to put staff very good at being non-political.
No, that's what I'm saying, David. I agree that we don't need staff to do it, but I don't think that we need all of these other things done. So having the consultant do what would be a typical staff report, but having the consultant do it to keep staff out of it. So I was agreeing with you, actually. I don't think we need all of these things.
Yeah, and I hear you on that. And then at the same time, like tonight, I just came in and I was like, hey, I got a bunch of questions for this consultant and what they could do. The meeting that we had in January, right? I feel more prepared now for, I went off and thought about term limits and what it could be. I heard what you guys were saying about it, and I'm trying to weigh the pros and cons myself, right? Obviously I was like, it doesn't make sense to me. I kind of still make that, but now I want to know, I want to meet with staff to provide them the best, not staff, but the consultant, to provide them the best direction possible to meet all of the things that we were inquiring about, right? Because our conversation in January started out about term limits, but I would love to hear from others that aren't just us, right? Or what we know about a presidential election being just two terms, or here in the state of California. I feel like there's some education that needs to kind of happen for us to make a better decision. And I think having an opportunity to speak with the consultant about this on a non-staff council member political level would be helpful to me, and I think it's helpful to all of us, actually. I don't know. This is going to be a pretty consequential decision that will reverberate for years, for a long time, throughout the county. And I want to make sure that we do it right, and if we're going to do it this way, we invest in it fully. And it looks like it's going to be expensive.
I will thank him, Councilmember Oro. It's how do we fully vet, understand the implications of this? How do we get through the process with a community understanding of it as well?
It sounds to me like the scope can be changed, right? So like I understand what Councilmember Oro is saying, that he has questions and wants to give direction, totally, but I don't think we need to have a subcommittee. I think we all want to be on the subcommittee. So I don't think the subcommittee is going to work.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
It will simply be a committee, not a subcommittee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just think the scope needs to be changed. And if they're billing us hourly, then there might be into that.
You're right. There's nothing set in stone about this scope of work. We contemplated a subcommittee. We contemplated a steering committee. None of those need to happen. We could have individual meetings with council. We could have the consultant come and present information to the whole council and take input, or they could go back into their silo and just talk to staff and just prepare a report. And they are going to just do hourly. So I actually thought this contract was going to be a little bit more when I first asked for this scope of work. So certainly $11,500 is a lot of money. Just when I know what consultants cost, actually that was going to be a little bit more. So I think they have tried to kind of pare down and to not have this be an endless pursuit of money while trying to appease 5 different ideas on a council. I think this is a deliberate, very short-term kind of contract with but admittedly they aren't 100% clear on the outcomes, because the discussion in January wasn't a complete discussion. It was an initial discussion, and we raised some of those comments, particularly in subtask 2. When you start to peel back the layers of this onion, it may not be as simple as just term limits. When you particularly overlay district voting, for example, when you overlay the governance, charter city versus general law, and whether it would make sense to have a charter if you're going to have term limits or not. I mean, it's a little bit more of some legal aspects to it. So the city council versus fire district board governance. There are a lot of little onions to this that we didn't peel, little layers to the onion that we didn't talk about in January. And that's the piece that they want to dig into. That's the piece they want to make sure that they have a clear direction from the council on. And that's why they proposed it to be first. Rather than running off, making a bunch of assumptions, they wanted to literally sit with you, to ask the council and the community, what is it that we want and when do we want it by? And so that was the point of that first task. But there doesn't have to. It is a morphable scope. It doesn't have to be a committee. It doesn't have to be a subcommittee. Those are malleable.
If I can throw in a couple more cents, I like the idea of maybe either having an initial public meeting or maybe even a one-on-one with each of the council members so that the consultants can figure out where our heads are at, do their analysis, come back with kind of a preliminary report that we can refine and ultimately approve as a report. And then after that, we need to schedule a public meeting just to encourage the public to weigh in, but to weigh in after we've got some good information. Mm-hmm. Right now, if we had a public meeting, we'd get people with opinions, but we wouldn't be in a position to say, here are some of the consequences, read this report and now let's talk about it.
Informed
opinions. I frankly don't think we need the consultants to oversee that. So I think, again, if we can keep the costs down, yet get some good analysis, particularly given the district and all the other unique features of American Canyon, then I think we'll end up with something worthwhile, and then we can go to the public to get input, and then ultimately refine it to decide whether we put it on the ballot and when.
Let's make sure what we're spending on is this quality work. We're not shortchanging ourselves.
Yeah.
Trying to be cheap.
And I think Vice Mayor Joseph, your approach there tackles it in a way, and like I try to interrupt you rudely, and I'm sorry, but it's an informed opinions is what we're looking for right now, right? And I think, based on the conversations and comments last time, yeah, people have opinions on it, and they probably are far more informed on it than me. But I felt like it was passion over substance on a lot of things, and for me, I may be coming in at that way too. And so if we can better define this scope, right? And I think there are a lot of layers to this that we haven't contemplated. I think the city manager and staff have contemplated some of this stuff, like this charter study versus general law, and what do we do with the fire board? And then, I mean, even just thinking about district elections too, right? Is that something that becomes part of this? Because we're really looking at how people choose their council members. I just feel like the scope, I'm not comfortable with this scope of work. If we can come back with like, well, after you hear us tonight, Jason, can you synthesize what we're doing here?
Yeah, I mean,
to find out what we're doing to make it more clear, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's we anticipated that there might be some revisions to the scope, and so that's why the action isn't approve said agreement in attachment 1 with the explicit scope of work. What it says is approve an agreement, right? That is going to get finalized with a scope of work that could look different than what's in here, right? And instead of having a subcommittee, instead of having a steering committee, we could say step 2, step 1, it sounds like there would be an interest in having an initial public meeting, and step 2 could be individual council meetings. Instead of a subcommittee meeting, we would have one-on-ones with the council, and they would get, as Vice Mayor Joseph said, where's our head at, right? And so they could have that, and then they can go back and begin to look at alternatives and to synthesize some of that, and then present that back to the council and then a public meeting. So that's not a lot different than what the words are in here in this proposal. And the proposal is a time and materials hour basis. So we're not, if the council said we want to have 10 public meetings and we want to have 4 committees, that would be a much different scope of work. This really kind of shaping around the edges on a scope, we can go back and modify that scope and actually enter into an agreement that I think the council will be amenable to.
So Jason, I agree with your notion of keeping staff out of the politics. Totally get it. I'm on board with that. And what I'm looking at in this proposal, I don't see any commitment to the $11,500. I'm seeing an hourly rate of $250. So potentially we, the council, can have this first public meeting and decide, nah, this isn't what we want, and never bring this person back. And there goes $250 and not $11,500.
Correct. Most of our professional services agreements are done on an hourly basis. And so the action is essentially appropriating only $11,500, giving me the authority to execute a time and materials contract for no more than $11,500. And it's built on an hourly basis. And so I would not have authority to procure any more services from them beyond the $11,500, but they would only be paid for the services actually rendered up to $11,500. So if they had one public meeting and they had individual meetings with council members and spent 4 or 5 hours, that would be it. And the council say, you know what, we're not interested in this more, we're done. It's not a guaranteed $11,500. It's not a retainer or anything like that. It is a time and materials hourly basis at the rate that was quoted up to the cap. And they're not allowed to work more than that cap without authorization from the city. And at this point, I don't even have budget authority above the $11,500. So they're not allowed to do work above that or expect to get paid for work above that.
And that was my understanding when you first brought it up, that I thought it was like a budget that was provided to you. They said they wouldn't go beyond that budget. We just got to be mindful to speak a little less while we're sitting there with them. So we need to be mindful when we do sit down and talk with them individually.
Mm-hmm. Boy, you're making it tough on us, Pierre.
Yeah, I know we got some talk.
Mind of the store.
And keeping in mind when I'll probably be joining you for these meetings, so I have an understanding also where your head's at, but I don't charge you that same rate. So it's we're happy to keep those to a minimum as well.
I'm gonna start that same rate if I keep getting called to all these meetings. Kidding.
Council ready for public comment on this matter?
Yep.
Before we go to public comment, I'm just trying to understand where we are right now. Are you modifying 2 right now, or are we? What kind of direction are we having, or do we not have final direction and we're waiting for public comment?
Sure. Where I'm at right now is, recommending. We haven't had comment yet, but I'm recommending that I receive the authority, that the council appropriate the funding, and I receive the authority to enter into an agreement with MRG. I'm understanding the council would like to refine the scope a little bit we would not like to increase the number of hours in the contract, so we're going to refine this scope, keeping it under the approximately 44 hours that are estimated of work, and we're going to tweak the scope. So we're not going to have a council subcommittee. We're not going to have any kind of citizens committee. We are going to have some one-on-one meetings and kind of fold all that in there. And an initial public meeting, a concluding kind of public meeting after a report has been generated and the public can inform themselves on this report. And that's generally how that scope of work will look. That report would have pros and cons. It would have different governance structures as it relates to the council and who could be on the council or not related to district elections. Those different possibilities. So that's where we are. And like I mentioned, it's a slightly, I'll call it less words than the 6 items that are in here now because of some of the things coming out. Potentially it could be less. It definitely won't be more, at least without additional council approval.
And what we'll be voting on is to spend $11,500, not to exceed $11,500 for services related to term limits.
Exploring options, correct. This, and I would just be careful to note that this doesn't have any scope of work, any kind of process that is involved. If the council decides they would like to go forward with a council initiative to the voters, none of that work is in here. So if you fast forward a couple of steps and there's some sort of decision that gets made related to this, ballot writing, legal analysis on ballot measures, any of that sort of thing is not in here. That would be a separate task. This is only the report on pros and cons and some public engagement.
So when do we get to know those costs?
Yeah, Bill, that's where our city attorney comes in, and hopefully he doesn't charge $250 an hour either.
It's a fair question. I don't know if Bill would be able to opine on what a ballot writing, a ballot measure writing effort. For this, we probably wouldn't be using someone like MRG. We'd probably be using an actual attorney, whether it be the city attorney or someone who specializes in this exact kind of thing. Bill, I don't know if you have some thoughts on how those.
I think it depends on what the recommendation of the council is.
Right.
If you want to be a charter city, that's definitely that's a significant exercise, right? And there are advantages to it. The ballot measures, I think, for the term limit issues and for district council elections, I think that's something that's manageable. I'll just say it's manageable. I don't think that's a big issue. But I think, charter reorganization, would be an umbrella that you'd have to look at separately. I could say that right now. But the other things are things that are associated with things that have been done in the past. But I think you need to have this robust discussion like you're contemplating and discussing now to give further direction on it.
So you didn't answer my question. How much is it?
I'd say for a charter city, I think you're probably looking at something in excess of probably $25,000 to $30,000 would be what most firms would look at for that, because it's going to want to include a thorough analysis of your water capabilities and water resources, and that's going to involve not only the county, but because of your relationship with Vallejo, matters in Solano County, and I think that would be an extensive proceeding. It's manageable. I also think that the way that the electricity production is changing with more individual generation, I think that's something that in some areas of the city attorney's organizations, that's come up also as a charter power that needs to be redefined. And you're a developing city. You have the capability to implement a lot of things. So on the charter city thing, I think what I've said is reasonable. I can certainly get a more appropriate estimate by the next council meeting. But measures for the ballot. I'm not so sure some of those wouldn't be handled under our retainer.
Very good, thank you. Comment now? Hearing no objection. Have we received any public comment on this?
No public comments received.
Okay. Well, that concludes that part, so we'll close public comment. Return to council for further discussion, desired action. We have a resolution here.
Is there? I'm trying to figure out. Like, I feel like before we go spend the money, is there some staff stuff that we could do in the meantime to like just kind of educate us on some of the basic stuff of, touching base on moving between charter city versus general law city and how that implements it and what that might mean for elections and things like that. Like, and then come back and further define this so that, we're not just leaving it on this hourly sort of basis.
I think, David, we can, and you can disagree with me and it's totally fine, but I think we can, at this point, move forward with the initial meeting with MRG as a public meeting and ask them these questions. And then I think once we've gotten our questions answered, we can figure out what we want as a council and we can give direction to staff on what we believe they can do that's, non-political, non-partisan, and give MRG direction on what we want them to do if we decide to even retain them after that meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but we would have to approve that tonight on this thing to get that first hour of.
You would. I mean, they're a consultant and they're professionals and they don't, they're not just going to show up and start facilitating meetings for free, but they also aren't, they are a well-established, well-known company, and they're not, this particular contract, this particular agreement is not going to make or break them. They're not going to come into this counting on this full amount. If we have this first step and they never do any additional work under this contract for us, it's not going to make or break them either way. And it's not going to be any hard feelings either. So it, from a contract organization perspective and a process perspective, getting them in the door to perform an initial step one, there'll be a little bit of prep time in their mind. They're going to help with the staff report. So they're going to need to get ready and to present something to you, to listen to you. If the council ends up deciding not to want to use them anymore, or just give staff a couple of basic things to do and be done with it, they will go on their way. And it's not going to be, any hard feelings or any extra bills or whatever. This isn't a large enough or an important enough, contract for them in the grand scheme of their business that it's going to make or break them.
So to Council Member Abadamas's point, public comment, we can ask all these questions that I was hoping to ask tonight, right? And put that input, get the public in here, say what you want to say, have the consultants hear us out. 2 hours later, $500 later, we're done with them, and then they come back with a report. And then we'll do one-on-one meetings after that, or we read the report and then we decide, or what's...
we on issue in the past, on issues where there hasn't been 100% consensus on big issues, what we've done is to kind of take things one step at a time, right? We did it with cannabis. We did it even with the gas station, right? We'll do things one step at a time. So in this case, my vision is we would do it one step at a time. We would have the initial sort of kickoff public meeting with the council, and then we can come back without the consultants. They will have done their work. They can summarize their notes, and we can take the temperature of the council. Do you want to continue? We already have them under contract. Do you want to continue? We can, we don't have to, we're at a place where we don't have to streamline this in the next 90 days, right? We have enough lead time. And again, that was their second question, the when we're trying to achieve it, but we're not in a place where something has to be done in the next 45 or 90 days. So we can be as deliberate from a cost saving perspective as the council wants to be, and saying, we'll do that first step. Do we want to do another step? Do we, and they're already under contract. And we know roughly what those next steps would be. And we can do it step by step if that's the interest of the council. I wouldn't approve another contract. My point is we wouldn't do a step 2 contract and a step 3 contract. It would, because they're just so small. You would do a single contract and then, have subsequent steps if the council wants to proceed.
I think from my perspective, I like Councilmember Washington's perspective. We're basically saying you've got an 11.5 budget to hire MRG to work on this. The scope we've kind of refined on the fly here, but I appreciate where the city manager is coming from. So I'm okay with authorizing it and certainly having that initial meeting. And we'll see, you know, at least we'll be better informed, better educated than we are right now. And there's value to that. And if it looks promising, we kind of say, let's keep doing it. Maybe have the one-on-ones and then, you know, come back at a later date with a more finalized report. So I'm okay with moving forward.
Yeah, good.
Is that your motion, Mark?
Yes, I'm sure staff would have preferred something more specific. I'll make a motion that we adopt a resolution appropriating 11.5 from the general fund undesignated fund balance and authorize the city manager to enter into a professional services agreement with Municipal Resource Group to assist the council in exploring options related to term limits.
I'll second.
I'll second it.
Motion second, roll call, please.
Councilmember Miriam Alvarado.
Yeah.
Councilmember David Orrell.
Yeah.
Councilmember Pierre Washington.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mark Joseph.
Yes.
Mayor Leon Garcia.
Yes. Thank you, council. We'll now move on to business item D2, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to award Larry Walker Associates Incorporated the Water Reclamation Facility NPDES permit renewal project using funds 540-50-570-42160 in the amount not to exceed $110,767.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Felix Hernandez, our Maintenance and Utilities Director, and Cherry, if you wouldn't mind also bringing in Jay Atkinson and Pam Phillips, additional staff who are going to help with the presentation this evening. And I will turn it over to Felix and team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawley. And good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff. Felix Hernandez, Maintenance and Utilities Director. So this item is as it relates to the city's current MPDS permit and its subsequent expiration. The MPDS permit renewal, it includes regulatory permits, assessing local limits, and evaluating the treatment capacity of the water reclamation facility. Staff did solicit proposals in early January. We received 2 proposals in early February. Larry Walker and Associates was found to be the most qualified. We did not include the proposal results, but I will say that Larry Walker and Associates was roughly half of what Woodard and Kern had proposed. The first part of this is the MPDS permit renewal. As you know, the waste is collected throughout the city. I mean, we have municipal, commercial, industrial waste. We then treat that. It's either recycled, used as reclaimed or recycled water, or discharged into the Napa River, which subsequently ends up in the San Francisco Bay. Any facility that proposes to discharge to waters of the U.S. Or currently discharges, that they must hold one of these permits. The permit is issued by the State Water Resources Control Board and is delegated to regional boards. In that permit, it does specify conditions. We are obligated to sample, analyze. We have discharge limits, conditions, special studies, and other required programs as part of that permitting process. And once we get the permit, the city's current MPDS permit expires on May 31st of 2022, and this renewal process is very technical. It has it involves collecting historical data, the aforementioned conditions and obligations that are specified in the permit. The process also includes generating a report of waste discharge that is developed and submitted to the regional board. Once we wrap all this stuff up, and these reports and analysis, we submit all of that to the regional board, at which point they will issue a subsequent tentative order, and we anticipate having a permit early summer 2022. Further to that, and in conjunction with this, we're also undertaking the analysis of the treatment capacity and the local limits assessment. The stress test, or it's the more technical term of that is industrial influent capacity assessment. And what that entails is looking at the current system, seeing what the capacity of it is, and it's really a biological loading type analysis. The local limits assessment tie into that because of what is being discharged into the system, and that the municipal code takes the local limits assessment and we then adopt those things in our municipal code. I'm sorry. So with that, those maximum concentrations for those dischargers, they purchase is determined by the local limits that's identified in the RMC and Woodard and Curran 2017 local limit assessment report, which I want to point out in the staff report, we did include that. And it is stamped draft. At some point, it just, that was overlooked that particular thing was not removed, the draft stamp. But we do go by the RMC and Woodard and Curran 2017 local limit assessment report, and the municipal code does point to that report. So the IICA, it evaluates the water reclamation facility capacity, it identifies options to increase limits of BOD and TSS as well as other constituents. The BOD and TSS limits are more affect the growth or business. As you may be aware that we've had some businesses contact us and they're concerned about these local limits, and because they're so low currently, BOD is 200 milligrams per liter and TSS is 220 milligrams per liter, which is not even where residential waste is. That's residential waste has a higher strength. So with that, those local limits, they're discharge limits. They apply to private dischargers, like I just mentioned. The limits reflect the specific capabilities of the reclamation facility, and they serve to protect from violating our MPDS permit and also protecting the environment. So all of these things combined, the permit renewal, the local limit assessment, and the stress test, all they happen congruently, and there is a time frame here that from when we start the permit renewal to the stress test and the local limits, all of those things coincide together. With that, the technical expertise that's required for these type of studies is beyond staff's knowledge. It's just very, very technical. We do provide data, but the technical part of it is very involved. The permit. So I'm on to the environmental review. This MPDS permit renewal it's categorically exempt from CEQA per section 15301. It's existing facility class 1. In the local limit assessment and capacity assessment, they're considered not considered projects, considered studies. We do recommend that council adopts this resolution authorizing the city manager to award the contract to Larry Walker and Associates. And with that, I'm sure there are going to be questions related to local limit assessments, which we'll be happy to take now.
Very good, thank you.
I
council
maybe don't have questions as much as comments or advocacy. I've been a long advocate of figuring out how we can attract more food and beverage businesses, and I know that our wastewater is a genuine constraint in terms of that opportunity. So what I'm hoping, and I've talked to the city manager, so I understand the theory behind local limits is to limit, not to expand. But I'm hoping there's a way in which we do this to identify whether or not there is the capacity to handle a little higher levels? And if not, to at least begin to identify, so what do we need to do to accommodate? Do we need to explore industrial pre-treatment or whatever, so that we begin to explore the strategy, what we need to do to begin to encourage more food and beverage businesses? Because I do think, being in the Napa Valley, there's a great market for that. And so, the question is, can that local limit assessment and stress test allow us to do that, or are we going to have to look at some structural or other infrastructure facilities or capital improvements to pull it off?
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor Joseph. It will identify those, and the local limits it really is, to your point, it's really, I don't see it as promoting growth. It's really being equitable in our growth and in what we're doing with our treatment. In evaluating this organic loading that can come in, and previously staff have done, we've completed in-house stress tests, and we've had consultants evaluate those results, and we've made changes. We believe that the current capacity of the water reclamation facility, that we could handle more waste. I'm going to defer to Mr. Atkinson, and he can speak more to that.
Hi, Jay, unmute your microphone.
Go ahead.
Thank you about that. Thank you, and thank you, Council Mayor Garcia and council members. And yes, we have done stress tests. We've actually done 2 within the last year, and made some minor modifications, really from the Woodward and Kern stress test, and we saw some favorable results. We definitely were looking at loading as our main factor, and we just to kind of put it where we're at is we typically get around 3,000 pounds per day of organic loading, and we can treat right around 6,000 at this point. That's kind of what we found out. So, we're right around the 50%, 47% capacity left. The interesting thing is, I was kind of looking back before this, and I started in 2010, and the flows coming to the plant haven't changed that much. They haven't really increased very much at all over these last 10, 11 years. But the loadings have continued to just gradually grow. But again, with the changes that we've made, I think that we can definitely handle some more, or some more organic loading, for sure.
Although I appreciate that, because it's what I want to hear, I also know that we haven't grown a lot population-wise for the last 10 years. So our capacity's kind of plateaued because our population has too. We're about to embark on adding another 4,000 to 6,000 people over the next 10 years. Is that population growth, I'm assuming that's going to take you from the 3,000 up to somewhere higher. And so that, I guess the question is, can we accommodate all the population that we're planning and still have something left over for industrial growth?
I'll speak to that.
Yeah.
This process of this latest stress test, what it does is and not that we don't have experts on staff, but it takes an expert and evaluation of that. So it really takes everything that we've done thus far, and it looks at it very critically to answer those questions. And that then in turn lets us set those local limits, like I had mentioned. Right now, the local limit assessment, what I have found is what was done in the 2017 assessment is not even congruent. It looks like it wasn't really implemented in the municipal code. And I've found this just through going through and researching this, because I know it is kind of a high priority topic. this is going to allow us to have all those things congruent. Everything will match in the local limit assessment, the municipal code, and then we'll be able to validate that through this stress test. And also the stress test in this process, it looks at these bottlenecks in the system. So it may be how much air we have at the treatment train or hydraulic capacity. It may identify some pre-treatment that we can put in. So it does address those things, Vice Mayor Joseph, and I'm looking forward to completing it so we can present that to council.
Great, thank you.
One other thing to just add on to that, Vice Mayor Joseph, is the nature of the plant itself, which is modular and expandable. And so many older traditional facilities have a more limited footprint. Our footprint anticipated the expansion of the membranes. In particular, we have 4 trains now. It's expandable to 6 in very short order. And you're not talking about having to buy a new property and make a whole treatment plant. The entire concept around that plant was modular trains. And so, the growth has always been anticipated to be accommodated. At what point might you have to start looking at additional trains? At what point, those are all the trigger questions that are going to hope to be kind of studied and looked at. But fundamentally, the expansion is there. And whereas other facilities are butting up against neighbors or have large ponds or large tanks or other constraints where expansion is a much more difficult concept.
I'll say on-site opportunities are there for pre-treatment or I'm thinking trying to follow this sense of equity in it. If you're discharging a higher level of treatable effluent and somebody else is not, what we're requiring for those who are having discharge that requires more treatment, because there's something they can build at the closer to the source, or does this all have to be addressed at the treatment plant?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Garcia. It can be addressed at the source, and that's part of the assessment and part of our pre-treatment program that the city has. We go and we inspect facilities, and we can say, hey, here are some things. The main thing that we see are BOD, TSS, and pH. I think ammonia kind of creeps in there as well. So some of it can be addressed at the discharge point, and some can also be addressed at the beginning of the treatment train at the city facility.
So remembering, what was the Wallaby yogurt plant had some significant issues with their charge. And I don't recall exactly the details on it, not being expert in it, but it led to them relocating, I believe. So I want to make sure that, that we're working with whoever our productive facilities are in terms of helping out. As that planning comes in process, these are the type of facilities you're going to need to be able to discharge through our system.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Garcia. We have had that dialogue with some of our commercial/industrial users. Some have expressed interest in connecting. There are folks that have treatment on site. They're zero dischargers, but meaning they don't discharge into our sewer system, but they have expressed the interest in doing that. And so it is kind of goes in line with what you're saying there. It's we're in those conversations. We have requested analytical data from our industrial commercial users, is that will help us in this assessment as well. So we're working with them hand in hand. We consider them a partner.
Yeah, I think I recall some of the effluent discharge is actually trucked out to I believe it's Oakland, to a facility there. It handles some of those that are more and on our facilities are in Napa Valley. I think came up was the with Napa Sanitation District dealing with some of the issues with wineries. I think they were trying to at one point come up with a solution that could be addressed more locally than having to take all that effort to truck it down to Oakland.
That's correct. And the other thing that we considered in those discussions is we're removing those vehicles off the highway. any hold and haul, we're taking vehicles off the highway, we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and we're able to treat that waste and then take that water and recycle and put it to beneficial use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other council comment? Council ready for public comment on this matter? What is our action desired here? I think it's the resolution. Yes. Did we receive any public comment?
No public comments received.
Okay, public comment is closed. Return to council. What's the desired action?
I'll make a motion that we adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to award Larry Walker and Associates, Inc., the Water Reclamation Facility NPDES permit renewal project using funding source 540-50-570-42160 in the amount not to exceed $110,767.
A second.
Motion second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Abadamos?
Yes.
Councilmember Oro?
Yes.
Councilmember Washington?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes, thank you, council.
Mayor, before we jump off this item, I don't mean to put one of our staff on the spot, but I see Pam there politely listening. And I was hoping, Pam, if you wouldn't give the council just a quick little blurb on what you've been doing as it relates to COVID and sampling in our wastewater, and kind of share with them the cool work that you're doing.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So when COVID first started, there was a lot of hurry and test the wastewater to see if COVID exists in the wastewater and see if it's going to harm their workers. But what they found is they can actually test the water for RNA. So when the virus enters your body, it starts shedding, and it'll start shedding its RNA. So what they realize is they can actually run tests and pull out a gene of this RNA and actually make a concentration in the wastewater of how much RNA is in the wastewater. It's basically per milligrams per liter concentrate in wastewater. So they call it wastewater-based epidemiology. They've done it with opioids to try and figure that out when that was a problem. So then they did it with COVID. And so starting to see this, it's like, oh, maybe we should look at testing our water. So we started, and we actually started just paying for it. And then little by little, we were able to, with the help of Napa Health, allow Berkeley to test our water for us. And it's free of charge because Napa Health actually asked to do it. So we went from paying to getting our wastewater tested to having it tested for free. So I take about 2 samples a week from and it's basically our domestic, and we're in a really unique situation because we have 2 lines. We have an industrial and a domestic. So we can actually just pull from our domestic line that water that we want tested. So I've been getting numbers. Oscar's been giving me positive numbers, and then we just make a really raw data graph. It's really interesting to see the N1 gene of COVID in the wastewater, because that'll spike right maybe about a week prior to an outbreak happening, because your body starts shedding the virus as soon as it gets the virus. So it's going to be excreting the virus as well. So they can actually tell what areas will be having outbreaks. There's been a lot of use on college campuses and dorms. Bigger communities have been able to isolate different pump stations and sample from pump stations. So if they see a spike in one of the areas, they can actually do more outreach to that area, saying that they'll need to shelter in place. You can, like I said, you can basically kind of do it, in any kind of community or large building. Universities, like I said, are doing it a lot because they have the ability to actually just take the water and go test it on site and get really quick results. We're getting pretty quick results as well. But we also have a small community. So it's, it's really kind of, we're seeing the spikes in the latest graph I sent out was pretty interesting too. We're seeing a big decline in it. So that's what I've been doing.
That's amazing.
That is very interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
I wonder if you can certainly planning with epidemiology and what their vaccination clinics might anticipate their needs are as well based on that. Yeah, it's a very interesting conversation. Thank you for doing that.
That's all, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you, Pam.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council as well.
Thank you, Jay.
And staff.
We ready to move on to management staff oral reports?
Yes, Mayor. We don't have any other management reports from staff. I do have an announcement about an event taking place next Tuesday and Wednesday. The city, partnering with the Fire District and Napa County Health and North Bay Healthcare, are putting on a vaccination clinic here in American Canyon at the Holy Family Church on Tuesday and Wednesday. And so this event is geared towards all of our residents who are 65 years in age and above. And we have a very simple sign-up form on our website that then sends you to the official signups on the medical sign-up page with Napa County. And so we're trying our best to get all the word out and in multiple languages in multiple connections. And if any of you or anyone has any other ideas about how we can communicate with our residents, we'd be greatly appreciate the additional insight and trying to make sure everyone knows about this availability. Like I said, it is geared towards folks who are 65 and above, and the clinics are next Tuesday, Wednesday. They're free to American Canyon residents, so there's no cost involved. You do have to sign up. There's a little bit of medical history, that sort of thing that gets involved in the sign up process, but it's very exciting. It's the first physical clinics that are going to be here in American Canyon. Our fire district has been doing some mobile clinics, which Chief Cahill may talk about, but this is the first on-site clinic. So we're very excited about it, and hopefully people will sign up and take advantage of it.
Very important for American Canyon. It's good to have that happening for us. I think, it behooves all of us we have our circle of contacts in the community out there, so they spread the word to everyone out there. I think a concern of mine would be just with being involved with food access in American Canyon. I know some residents have mobility issues, so they may be of that qualifying age group. So I don't know if we have been able to set aside any type of transportation.
We haven't at the moment. MBTA has been in the past doing some transportation. We are reaching out through our senior center, through our call list of folks, and we'll figure out how to get those mobility issues addressed if and when we find out about them. So we won't let that be a barrier. How we exactly take care of that, I think, is still a little to be determined. But at the moment, we have this kind of interest form on our website that makes the initial connection with us and its contact information, and it allows people to go sign up. If for some reason they're interested, but they're not going to be able to physically get themselves next Tuesday or Wednesday, that's a follow-up conversation we're going to have with them, and we're going to be cross-checking the folks who have signed up on our form but haven't actually registered yet to kind of inquire with them about their interest that hasn't turned into an appointment and why and what if there are barriers, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Appreciate the list of the community contacts. Those are often in American Canyon a great place to spread the word.
Yeah.
Find the people who can lend a helping hand. Thank you. Moving on to Mayor and Council committee reports. I see we got Councilmember Oro's report. I likewise attended that same presentation. Very informative. Pretty academic in a lot of its content, but that was a discussion today with the North Bay Division, League of California Cities, Cal Cities, have that coffee chat in the morning, and similar to that, a lot of the conversation came up about segregation is very much alive out there. It's about diversity, inclusion, and equity. And it was a good conversation today. From primarily, I think they were Roanoke Park council member was very presented a lot of the issues that she was aware of. She's African American and certainly has experienced much of that in her life as well. And that was good. Anything further to add, Councilmember Oro?
No, I don't have anything further to add. Is this the time for future agenda items too?
No, we'll get to it in a moment. It's going to go through.
I will wait.
Councilmember Washington.
Nothing to report. I do appreciate Vice Mayor Joseph mentioning our climate action meeting earlier on. So nothing else I have. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Abinamo?
Nothing to report either.
Okay. On committee reports, Vice Mayor Joseph?
Yes, I did prepare a report late as usual. I don't know, Cherry, if you got that or not, but in any event, the highlights, I think, were the Napa Valley Transportation Authority meeting that the mayor and I attended. We did approve a loan for their new transit facility, which has been a years in the making project. But what was real exciting is we also got updates on some of the key projects NVTA is working on. Sosco Junction, as Supervisor Billy Ramos commented at the State of the City, is fully funded. Design is almost complete. The environmental review is complete. We could see construction starting next year, which is real exciting. And even our own multimodal corridor study is moving along. I think later in April, there may be a meeting at MBTA to discuss some of the parameters. As Councilmember Oro mentioned, it's not going to recommend 6 lanes, but it is going to recommend some transit improvements, some bike and pedestrian walkways, undergrounding utilities, and some intersection improvements. So considering a lot of that will be funded by Regional Measure 3 or even Caltrans operation funds, I think that to me is the most exciting because it really is going to provide some real investment in transforming the look and functionality of the corridor, and that I think will encourage a lot of private development. And the Climate Action Committee, in addition to the hydrogen discussion, which was really exciting, we also approved, or we're going to go for a $50,000 grant to do our greenhouse gas emission inventory countywide, so we have a baseline to know what we're doing. So those were exciting.
Very good. I was interested in that hydrogen fuel process because it takes a considerable amount of energy just to create hydrogen. You make it from water and it goes back to water. But I don't know if there's been an analysis on the demand for energy and the cost of doing that to produce the fuel. Like a lot of these things, there's like our earlier discussion this evening on fuel stations. What's the total picture look like versus the more immediate focus?
Yeah, compared to solar and wind, hydrogen is a little further down the path, but it offers some really exciting stuff. And one of the points that Councilmember Washington pointed out at Genentech, they use all solar with a hydrogen backup for the downtime. So, there are systems in play. The technology's there. It's just a question of scaling it and applications. Very exciting stuff.
Very good. Look forward to hearing more. Moving on to future agenda item. I did have one to bring up. I think Councilmember Oro, you have one also. Future agenda item. Mine was Vice Mayor Joseph and I met with it's a subcommittee of the Working Families, it's Napa Solano Central Labor Council. It was this Community Benefits Coalition. We had a request for American Canada to consider an emergency ordinance hero hazard pay for grocery store workers. And I would like to be able to bring this, if council is agreeable, bring this forward as an action we can look at probably for our next meeting. I think we're kind of familiar with issues around hazard pay. It was approved by state and it had expired. And they're requesting to reinstate that. The parameters would be either date time limited or by what tier we are currently in for grocery workers. It's for stores that have more than 200 employees or 20 locations nationwide. So that would apply to, well, we have two grocery components in American Canyon, Safeway and Walmart. I think Vice Mayor Joseph, if you'd like to comment, I know Mr. Ross could also weigh in on this too.
I think it's worth bringing back to the council for consideration and certainly, a legal assessment at the same time.
Mr. Ross?
I can do that. It's obviously an issue that's being tracked by city attorneys in several jurisdictions. There's litigation on the ordinance as it was presented in Long Beach that's been brief, so I think I can comply with that in that time period. Very doable.
Okay. Discussion on the council, is this something that there's interest in pursuing?
Yeah, that was the thing I was going to bring up. So you already got 3 out of 2, 5. So, yeah, totally supportive of that.
So as we do our process for memorializing future agenda items, we want to take a roll call vote so that we have our meeting minutes and we have the record of how these future agenda items are brought back. So a motion and a second and then a vote would be appropriate.
Sure.
I'll move to bring forward to the city council language and emergency ordinance around hero pay. Bring it to the council as soon as possible.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion second, roll call.
Councilmember Abadamos?
Yes.
Councilmember Oro?
Yes.
Councilmember Washington?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, council.
Since you already covered David's request, I'd like to make one as well, another one, and that relates to governance protocols. They were adopted 10 or 15 years ago and haven't really been reviewed that much. And over the last few months, a number of issues have come up that I would like to suggest that we have an ad hoc committee of the council go through the protocols, examine which ones need to be revised or which ones need to be developed, and slowly but surely bring back some of that over a period of time so that we have a policy manual, if you will, that will help guide us on how to handle some policy issues, as well as be a training manual for the new council members that show up. So,
Vice Mayor Joseph, can you give us examples of what that may be?
Well, the one that kind of triggered it all is in discussing some issues regarding how we communicate, how we notice things, the community garden as a case in point. That maybe we need to formalize a philosophy of how we communicate. And I'm not saying that, some things we're doing already and it's just a matter of documenting it. The fiscal policies has been kind of my soapbox for 10 years, and that's certainly part of it. But you can also look at development standards in the sense of, how do we as a council approach certain development issues? For example, trees. There's some projects that we don't realize are going to result in the elimination of a lot of redwoods. It seems to me that we ought to be at least requiring that we be notified so that we can weigh the pros and cons or consider alternatives. Those are just a couple of issues that have come up recently, but frankly, I think we need to go through even the agenda setting process. Again, the city manager has been doing a lot of things to make it functional, but maybe we need to just look at that at a more holistic approach and analyze, and document how we want to make sure we bring issues back. Because frankly, what the manager is doing is great, but it's just because he's doing it. Some of these things need to just be put down in writing and be kind of institutionalized so that we refer to them and say, okay, this is how we do business. That's my off the cuff case.
Council interested in pursuing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, where do you put it on the prioritization level, Mark? Is it like a year-long process here, or right now, today?
Yeah, it's not drop what you're doing and start rewriting these things. But I do think it's something that if we had an ad hoc committee, as I've said, these are the council's protocols. I think the original protocols, and I wasn't here when they were adopted, but the impression I got is they came from staff who probably took them from another community. I don't know if we've really analyzed them much, but yeah, I would say this is over a 3 to 6 month process, trying to identify the list and knocking them out one at a time.
We're right now a city of renewal and reinvention, and we ought to be looking at some of those things. I could be supportive of that, and I'd already go ahead and volunteer myself to be on that committee. I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, I would volunteer myself too. That's part of the not
got
so
a committee.
intelligent
Just say yes, and so you don't have to do the work, and we'll come back to you. So,
So to formalize this, motion and second to.
Second.
Oh, yes, I will make the motion.
Take the motion, please.
What is the motion?
Yes.
That we adopt a council ad hoc committee to review the governance protocols.
I will second that.
Motion second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Albadamos?
Yes.
Councilmember Oro?
Yes.
Councilmember Washington?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Joseph?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes. Thank you, Council.
I'm going to take a little bit of liberty with that motion and assume it was meant to include the fact that Mark and David were actually going to be the members that are appointed to it.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's what the council meant, although
You
so
are-
unsaid.
You are correct in that.
Okay.
Following the conversation.
Derek, if you would mind amending the minutes to reflect that, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything further on future agenda items?
Thanks for taking on the job.
If not, well,
we
we have concluded our business for the evening.
Thank you.
Very good discussion tonight, Floyd. Thank you. And certainly a lot of community input to help us with our decision. And that's very much valued. So thank you all. We are adjourned.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.